business time.
Welcome, everyone, to the FATED Connections Path of Exile community podcast, episode number 75. We're one league into the 3.18 Path of Exile Sentinel release. We're all super hyped about the changes to rare monsters, the addition of Sentinels as farming tools, and of course, all the rewards that we're being showered with. And in order to discuss our first impressions of the league, we're joined by TarkeCat and, of course, Grimro, who chat has told me is actually the only person who understands Sentinel. So, yeah, that's
not that much to understand. I guess the breeding is a little bit,
Well, anyway, since we're running late, I hope you guys don't mind us skipping the introductory pleasantries for the most part, and we'll go right into it. Grimro, welcome to the podcast. How has your league start been?
Yeah, it's been pretty good.
Wait. Sorry. For some reason,
fuck you, Graham.
I think they can't hear you. That's like.
Oh no, that is not good.
No, that's literally the opposite of what is intended. Give me a second.
We can hear him fine. They're saying.
Wait, you can hear him? Okay. Well, then we just continue. Never mind me. I just
true. All right.
Okay. Leaving all of this in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I already did the intro. Do you expect?
Nah.
Do you expect me to do another intro now?
Cut. Apparently, he's really fucking loud. Okay, turn Grim down a bit.
Okay.
You fucked your intro as well. You said we were one league into 318.
Oh, I said 1 week.
No, you didn't. You said one
league.
Okay,
turn Grim down. Let Grim say something. They'll say if Grim's okay, and then we'll run through it again, and we'll pretend that we're.
I'm so glad you're here, Tarky. This fine. This aura of like calm and professionalism. That's really all I needed. Let's go, Grim.
Hello. Is it good?
Seems fine to me.
We're good?
Yeah.
Fine. All right, okay.
I mean, it would be easier to figure out if you said more than one word.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Sorry, I forgot. No, go, right. Fucking redo your intro now.
It's too funny, man. I can't. Anyway. You really want me to do the intro again?
Do the intro again.
Welcome to the FATED Connections Path of Exile community podcast, episode number 75. We're 1 week into the 3.18 Sentinel release, and we're all super hyped to talk about the new Sentinel farming tools, about the new endgame bosses, as far as we've reached them, and all the rewards that we're being showered with in this league. And to talk about all this stuff, we got not only TarkeCat here with us, but also Grimro, who is, as chat told me, the only person who understands Sentinel correctly. So Grim is going to spill the beans and share all the goodies with us. But before we go into the finer details, let us quickly hear from everyone what they've been up to and how the league start's been going. Welcome, Grim. What do you have to say about your league start?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. I league started Corrupting Fever as a mapper. I figured, pretty good time selling all the boss stuff to the bosses, and that worked out pretty well. Got a bit of money. But first and foremost, I always like to focus on the new league mechanic, and thankfully GGG delivered this time, and it's been a bit of a banger. And overall, it's been super rewarding, and there's a lot of depth there, and we're still just trying to figure it out. But I imagine we'll get to that soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
sounds great. Well, Balor, let's hear from you. What is your league start?
I finally had a good one. I started the Lightning Arrow Deadeye. Same idea. I just wanted to map. I don't want a boss. I'm not into bossing. I don't care. I'll sell it all. First time in like 6 leagues that I haven't re-rolled on like day 2 or 3. Because my off-meta weird idea was just trash and didn't work, and I had to go something meta. So this time it worked, and I'm really happy about it.
Yeah, unfortunately, you called your character day 3 reroll.
I did, but that's fine. That's fine. It doesn't matter.
All right. And we're all in softcore trade this time around, except Tarky, who is the usual SSF cat. What did you go for with the league start?
I league started on a Petrified Blood low life ice trapper. My thought process was I want to freeze things. I didn't take into account that every fucking enemy in the game would be immune to freeze. So I've since respec'd to lightning trap. So I have this thing called clear speed. And because I'm good at the game, I have an omniscience. So I do damage. I only have a 5 link, but I've got an omniscience. So I've got like 1.3 million damage on each like trap throw, which is like a lot of damage. So I've got more damage than a lot of people in trade, which is quite funny because all of my gear is absolutely dumpster. And I'm now just trying to make the build tanky again. What was quite funny is when I was doing the ice trap setup, I was like 20k armor, 20k evasion, ghost dance, divine shield, spell suppression cap, block cap, spell block cap. So I was like super tanky but did no damage. And now I've gone the other way where I do damage and everything that looks at me kills me. So I'm trying to find a nice little middle ground, but the build's going well.
Welcome to the playstyle that is the superior one.
6 portal gamers here. Let's go.
Yeah, 6 layers of defense.
I hit level 95. I don't need another level for the rest of the league. I'm good. Give me them portals.
See, what doesn't help though is that because I'm SSF, I've just changed my Atlas now, but it was full Expedition, full Altars, and full Essences. So it's like, yeah, no, these guys are kind of spooky when you start putting, Sentinels and stuff on these guys. So I went from like 10 deaths to I think I've got 150 deaths now at level 93. So I think Grim's proud. Is like, yeah, that's good gameplay right there. Yeah,
those are good numbers. Yeah.
Well, before
I
we
had
go,
100 deaths by the time I reached maps, just so that you.
Really 100? Okay, wow.
Yeah.
I was looking at your level, like I always like for my own ego, I compare myself. Well, I don't know why it's kind of worthless to compare myself to you, right? But we've been head to head on the level for the character for the most part. Like maybe you were 2 levels ahead here, I was 2 levels ahead there. But then when we were both 93, you made it to 95, and I just kept on dying. It's rough. I should have not gone past tier 14. I actually started Skeleton Mage Necromancer, like the absolute meta cuck build. And honestly, I should have prepared better and like prepared to play more on the league launch weekend, because the prices for everything, they just sailed away from me. It was so rough to keep up with the prices. I mean, I did get the Deck Reckoning and the Flesh Crafter and everything. I got my clusters now. So I'm sitting at like 2 million Shaper DPS between my 11 skeletons, and now slowly grinding away to get that big, expensive +3 helmet with the 2 supports.
Is that like just recom build it? Whatever it is, that one?
I was thinking about that, honestly, but it's a Shaper Elder base, and you can't recombinate the influence mods out of the influence pools, so you need to hit both influences. And what's really expensive about it is the 2 influences on the base. Needs to be also 86 plus, right? Because +3 minions for 86.
I mean, I think Gazi's selling a pretty cheap minion helmet at the moment. Maybe
that is true.
Oh man, poor Gazi. I've seen it. Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, we'll talk about the recombinator crafting a little bit later into the podcast. I have something to say about that as well. But do you guys, what do you think is more important to talk about? What's the first thing you're hyped to talk about? The rare monsters and the magic monsters, or the new mod system and the changes we went through, or the Sentinel League itself?
I'd probably say Archer Nemesis, because that's really the biggest thing people have to chat about, and then Grimro can spend like an hour and 30 minutes talking about Sentinel.
Lots of pressure.
I find that a good suggestion.
Well, is that not enough, Grim? Do you need longer than that?
Oh, true. Yeah, hold on. Let me just tack another hour into that. No, it's all good. Go ahead.
Well, no, I think that's fair, because, like, Sentinel, yeah, you find them on the coast already, but then probably most of us didn't use them all the way through leveling, because they make enemies quite a bit more challenging, and enemies were already somewhat challenging with the new mod system. How did you like the rare mods and magic mods on your first playthrough?
I loved them, by the way.
Oof. That is
love them.
that's a red hot take there. Let's hear it.
I love them. And I put sentinels on like all the time while leveling. Now, to be fair, I normally have 1 to 2 deaths by the time I reach maps. So this time I had over 100. So I'm not saying that it was balanced at all. It was definitely overtuned. It definitely needed the nerf. That was the right thing. But that doesn't mean I didn't love it. I loved it the whole time. It's one of those, I wouldn't want it to be like that every single time. I'm happy that they got nerfed. They were definitely overtuned. I'm not saying that's where they should have stayed. But God, did I have fun leveling. That was so much fun. So that was my everybody hated me on day one for, because I was just excited about dying a million times to these rares.
Ooh, yeah. Not sure I agree with that one, just personally. Personally, the story is always just like, kind of like a little bit of a chore. Just, get that out of the way. I don't want to do it. So, it didn't exactly slow me down, but it made it much less enjoyable. A few of the specific modifiers just were a complete nightmare. I think if you weren't prepared with like a leveling sheet or some sort of like you need to get the gems here and have like your power here and all sorts of stuff like that, it would have been an absolute nightmare. Because a lot of them were way overtuned, specifically in the health department. I think that was the problem. They just had way too much HP.
See, I'm in a similar boat to Balor, but the whole time. So I was leveling as a low life ice trapper, and it was taking me a while to kill things. And I'm like, if this is taking me a minute to kill things, then your average dude who's like picked heavy strike as his quest reward is having a lot of fun right now in Mudflats. But I mean, I enjoyed it being overtuned, but I'm someone like I enjoyed Launch Delirium. I've always enjoyed like overtuned lead mechanics at the start, and the whole time I was playing it, I'm like, they have to change it. The thing which irritates me about it now, because I think we're still going to get more changes, is I think if it had launched with that level of difficulty without a lot of just the straight up bullshit modifiers, I think it would have been fine. And this is like a very GGG thing, is right now I'm mostly happy with it, aside from the immunities, and I think they need to get rid of a lot of the immunities because they just brick certain build interactions. So what GGG will do is they'll like nerf it 20 times, and then they'll get rid of the immunities, and then it's over nerfed. Whereas if they just got rid of the immunities to start with, maybe did like one balance pass, it'd actually be fine. But we'll see.
I think the main thing which really sticks out to me is the build annihilating modifiers.
Yeah.
So this isn't like exactly like a deal breaker for me, but there's one modifier which I always notice is there, and that's steel infused, because I'm playing a build that only does physical damage over time. It's like 10 times as tanky as anything else, and if like an essence gets like the vampiric, steel infused, and like gargantuan, like I just leave. Like it's invincible, even with like 3 years of gear that I have. It's like I can't kill it. It's got like 10 million DPS. It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, a really good example of that is Chaos Weaver, which is like the same version but for Chaos Dot. But it's also then makes the enemies immune to Wither. So not only does it get like Giga Chaos Res and Max Chaos Res, like, oh, your main multiplier, yeah, that doesn't function. And it's why I respec from Ice Trap to Lightning Trap. But it's really stupid in the fact that you build your whole build around like, I don't know, chill proliferating for self-chill memes, or you're like a Herald of Ice build or Herald of Thunder build, and then it's like, oh, this is just like immune to shock, your build doesn't work. Like, cool.
I think immune to cold ailments. You're like, oh.
I think actually I'm just realizing now, because the problem I think is that there is a map modifier which is reduced physical damage taken, as well as the steel infused, as well as an ultra mod. Yeah. And I think the reason it becomes invincible is because it reaches 100% reduced physical damage from attacks. So I think stuff like that probably is not acceptable. But yeah, sorry.
Can it actually reach 100%? Because I know players are capped at 90% phys damage reduction from hits, no?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I think it just feels very tanky is what I'll say.
It's probably 90, but then it gets gargantuan, which is like, so now it's got 90% physical reduction and 50% just normal damage generic reduction. And then it's got regen.
Yeah, it feels like
oh, so I'm doing 5% of my damage, and it's got 4% regen per second. So I just don't see anything.
And then you empower it, so it's got another damage reduction multiplied. So yeah, it's actually invincible. But yeah.
And then you realize you're playing like Expedition and there's some random black site monster. It's like, oh, what are you doing, dude? I made a video talking about this. It's the whole thing of in isolation, Arch Nemesis would be fine if like map mods didn't exist, and then we had all these other League mechanics, and it's like, especially if you're running like Expedition in like tier 16s, and then you're like, oh, I'm putting sections on the map, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. It's just like there are just too many layers upon layers, and then the second you press Sentinel, it's like, all right.
Right up until I put on an Omniscience, I couldn't. There were many mobs in maps, the rares that I just couldn't kill. What got me the most really early, though, was Abyss mobs, the big giant claw scythe looking ones that had assassins. That is absolutely unfair.
Yeah, I agree that there's a map modifier which does the crit multi, and then there's the Arc Nem mod which is 100% crit. It's just like, yeah, lights out, mate. See you later.
Also, what made it even better is Assassin at launch. Not only was it like, oh yeah, the enemy just crit you, it was they took like 100% reduced damage from crits, or they were just like immune to crit or something stupid, so you just did no fucking damage.
No extra damage from crits, it was.
That was it. That was when they posted that mod list though. Trickster, I think, was one of the best examples of like, this is unintuitive bullshit. So
I've been saying that all along. Like before the league even started, I was like, "How is this making it better?" They said we want to condense the huge list of mods on rares down to like single recognizable mods. But I was like, "What? But these mod names don't mean anything."
Do you mean Gargantuan doesn't mean something to you?
Yeah, not if you've not played Arch Nemesis.
But no, that's the whole thing is like, it was all bullshit, and it was funny because like we made such a big point laboring this on the Baycasting with Chris, like, this is why we need this information, this is why it's important that players can understand what the fuck is going on. And there was all these people like, oh, Tarky, shut up, this doesn't matter, this isn't relevant to anything, like, why are they talking about this? And then the league comes out, we're like, this is fucked, and then they post the actual mod list, and once we could go through the mod list, it was so obvious what the issues were. It's stuff like that Chaos Weaver thing, whatever it's called. You never would have known that it was immune to Wither. You would have just thought, oh, it does has layers of Chaos res. It's like Trickster, you would be like, oh, it like runs away, but also it has like 90% reduced damage taken from spells and all this other stuff in there, and it's like, yeah.
Right. Do you think the league launch would have gone a lot better, or like it would have been a lot better received if we had received that list earlier? Like pre-launch?
If they'd posted that mod list beforehand, it wouldn't have come out in that state. If they'd posted that mod list before the league, it would have gone on Reddit. People would have been like, this is rubbish. Like, they would have pointed out all the problem modifiers, and they would have done like a follow-up post being like, okay, we're looking into it. It wouldn't have gone that way if they posted the list.
And
100%.
Tons of things get fixed by just getting rid of the word immune and making stuff less effective. Like, don't be immune to Wither. Wither has half effect. Right? And then you're like, now you get to keep your theme, just as an example, right? Doesn't matter specific numbers, but like that sort of thing, you get to keep the theme of going that you want. Just don't give me immune to anything ever under any circumstance if it's something I can't control. So immune to something on my map mod is fine. Immune to something on my expedition encounter is fine because I picked that, and if I pick it and it ruins my build, that's my fault. But if I have zero control, don't make it immune.
I think it's interesting though, because obviously I personally do understand the direction they were trying to go in. Like, they probably were sitting down at the round table and they're like, okay guys, rares are completely meaningless to players. How can we make these impactful gameplay defining moments in the game? And there's two ways you can go about it, right? You can have build around mods, which basically like you need to prepare for them and like have like let's say like the crit guy, right? You have to have reduced damage taken from crits because then otherwise you're just gonna get one shot by it. That's fine. And then there's like gameplay ones, which is like the ice cage, and that's like that's really good, right? And then they just randomly just throw a bunch of really bullshit ones in there as well, which are the ones which need to be removed. Like Taki said, like invulnerability. What's the counterplay there? Run away. Is that really how you want to play the game? Not really. I think my overall stance on it is that the ones like the ice cage, which are gameplay impacting, which they're kind of cool. And as much as I hate to admit it, like volatile and the lightning running guys, those are fine. Those like you can play around them. They're kind of bullshit. But overall, stuff like that I think is what the Arc Nemesis should have been, but not what we ended up with.
No, I completely agree with that. I was actually really surprised when they nerfed the toxic bombs and the incendiary bomb thing after effects. I found it very strange that those got nerfed because it's like that's completely play around. If you died to that, that was your fault. You stood in the thing.
You like those?
They did feel a bit fast. They were too fast, I think.
Well, yeah,
for
but it
how
was
much
like
they
it was
did.
weird. All they did was they didn't change the speed. They just said, "Oh, it's a 50% chance to spawn," which is like,
yeah.
rather than guaranteed. That
enough.
just seems such a strange change for me. I don't know.
Absolutely strange change. But I also think that those things are really weird implementations because I got annoyed by them more than once because they sneak up on you so quickly. They're really hard to see because they're really dark. In contrast to the old volatiles, which were like really bright balls on the screen. And they also have poor audio signaling. Like there's like almost no audio cue. So there's so many times where in maps I think, okay, I'm safe. I can open this menu and click some buttons here. And then all of a sudden you have like 5 toxic balls or incendiary balls on you and bam, you're dead.
Yeah, it really does. Increasingly, as the game progresses, feel like the best and only way to play and live is to be constantly moving. Like you have to like strafe, like otherwise you're just dead on arrival, man. And also, one thing I don't like about all of these new modifiers is that I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but like going through the story without movement speed boots, it's like you're instantly dead.
Oh.
You get the movement speed boots, and you're like, okay, I can kind of deal with these. Then they get more bullshit later on. And then, I don't know now, but like, everyone's not going to be in this situation. But with the Mage Blood belt, it's like, it's all a joke. Like, because you just run so fast, it's like nothing can hit you. I don't like how the difficulty is tied to movement speed. And even when you're doing Cirrus, like the die beam, like that is also tied to movement speed. And it's just an increasingly common trend I'm noticing.
Well, I think that's why they started doing like the more gimmicky boss mechanics, like the Maven memory game and stuff like that, which obviously is easier with movement speed. But they were like, okay, all of our bosses are just running in a circle. How do we stop players from doing that? Go charge up this orb. Go stand on that side of the map and get stacks and all that other stuff.
I will say one thing they did really well though. With this
Old
change.
gens?
No. We complain a lot in this game about visual clarity being a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But from day 3, I was doing double beyond 60% delirious maps. And I can tell you every single time I encounter any dangerous rare and what it's going to do. And I can see its abilities and I know where all the danger is. And I have never known that before. Ever. And
I
so
don't
that's
agree.
really good.
There's one mod specifically which I don't agree with, and that is the Heralding Minions one. The one which puts the wiry lightning totems down. I can never see that, and it always kills me. And it doesn't help that it was bugged on day 1.
I agree. I just mean, generally speaking, they're way better than in the past. That one mod has killed me like 50 times while looting because I didn't even know it was happening to me. But
yeah, it's kind of bullshit.
but that was the case with every rare modifier in existence. Lastly, like I couldn't tell what was going on. I know there were technically like 3 or 4 different kind of auras at tiny little auras at the feet underneath the delirium fog of monsters that I was never going to see, even if it was the only monster on the screen, and it never is. So I could never tell anything before, and now most of the time I can tell everything, even in double beyond 60% delirious maps, which is
wait. How do you tell everything? You hover every rare and you read the mods, or what?
No, but they all look different, and I just learned over 3 or 4 days which one does what thing.
Wait, what does look
have,
different?
like,
because
different-
they tell me the little tells, because I don't know. I know Gargantuan is like significantly larger than the others.
Not every one of them has a tell, right? But all the ones that really matter do. All the ones that make me change the way I'm playing seem to have a tell. All the ones that are just here's generic power, here's generic defense. Those don't, but they don't change the way I play. Like finding out something is going to take half damage from me doesn't change my play style at all, right? But finding out something's going to shoot green toxic stuff at me, that does.
Right.
And so the ones that matter all have different like aura effects around them, like a green glow or a big white glow around them, and I'm just having a way easier time telling when I'm in danger before I die.
See, I had a similar thing. So like when I was Ice Trap, if it was frozen, it wasn't dangerous. And if it wasn't frozen, that meant it was immune to the cold ailment. So I'm like, oh, that's the dangerous one. And now that I'm Lightning Trap, it's the same deal. If it's dead, then it's not immune to shock. And if it's not dead, it means that none of my fucking multipliers don't work, and I don't get 6% increased effectiveness of my fucking lightning damage.
I actually have a similar story to Tarky. So if I'm dead, I generally hover over it and I'm like, oh, that's bullshit, man. And then if it's not dead, I'm like, oh, that's bullshit, man. It's invincible. That's kind of my experience.
Yeah.
If those two scenarios don't happen, I just can't see the mods because they're dead.
For me, it was like a lot of times that I died, I did not know what the rare monster that I died to had. Like, I'd respawn, go back into the map, and be like, yeah, let's hover that and see what kind of mod combination that was that killed me. So I'm not sure I can agree with that, Balor, that you can easily tell which one's dangerous and which one's not. For me, usually I found out they're dangerous after the fact.
So it's important. I don't think it's intuitive. Like, I didn't know the first time I saw them. It's just something I was able to learn over a few days by having the list of Arch Nemesis mods on a different screen, and then when I encountered problems, reading what that thing did and learning. Which is, you can argue all you want, is not the way we should be learning these things, and that is a completely valid argument. But it can be learned now, which is way better than before. So that's still in the correct direction. If only there was some sort of glossary. Something. Anyway.
I don't know. I think the problem for me with Path of Exile generally and the way they balance the game, it's not necessarily how I would personally do it. I think that once you reach a level of content and your character is actually like suitably strong to do it, it should almost feel like a homogenous level of difficulty. I don't like how you can be in one map and it's 10 times harder than another map. Personally, I think that's a little bit jarring, and that it can be quite frustrating. And it creates a scenario where you'll get like half a level over an hour, and then you'll zone into one map, get 6 portaled, and lose the hour of progress. I don't think there should be such extreme difficulty spikes from combinations of rare modifiers.
I'd agree with that. I think the way to do extreme difficulty is stuff like what they've been doing with altars. I think altars is such a great way for them to do this level of like bullshit difficulty, because you have that thing, if you look at like, should I really add this extra one on here? I've already put 3 respawns. Nah, okay, I'm not. And then if that you die to that, that's your fault because you chose to do it, especially if you're like, oh yeah, so I've spec'd into like both altar nodes, I'm taking like 25% more damage with each one I click, you know, and I've just pressed the expedition, which like, oh, hits can't be evaded, but it gives me more logbooks, so let's put that one on, you know. I think that's a much better way of doing it. And the other thing which is good about doing it that way as well is it gives you more... It's all about agency, because it was one of the things which started irritating me a lot when they started like putting defense bricking mods on map mods. So it's stuff like, oh, your block's like unlucky and stuff like that. I really hated that. But that was kind of fine in isolation when it was just a map mod you had to reroll. Whereas this thing now of like, for one map, you could have that one poor like defensive mod on your map, or like reduce regen. But then you happen to go against an Arch Nemesis with Rejuve. It was the issue I was having when I was doing Petrified Blood stuff. I'm no longer Petrified Blood on my build. Is I'm like, yeah, I can afford to take one regen mod on a map, but I don't know if there's going to be something else in that map which interacts with that, which then fucks me over. And it's losing that control really sucks. And I think also, especially finally on that point, now that we have so much control over our Atlas and speccing in and out of mechanics, I think it's a real shame that we're getting a situation now where people are kind of like, oh, I wanted to do like an Essence strat, but I'm not going to do Essence strat because it's too rippy. Or like, I wanted to do this, but I'm having to spec out of it. People are like, they wanted to play Blight, but they find Blight like impossible now because Blight kind of got bricked by the modifiers and stuff.
Definitely. Certainly, especially Ritual. Ritual was bad. Just curious, I'll pose a question here if you don't mind, Kat. Is anyone here playing Melee? I'm just curious.
Not even if you paid me.
Yeah, so I wasn't aware. Well, I became quite quickly aware. So a bunch of people were league starting the Spectral Helix. I think Tuna recommended it, Jungren, a bunch of people recommended it. And everyone's like, oh, jiggly jazz to get on some Helix action. And it was not good at all, because I don't think anyone realized, or you don't realize as a range player, just how much more punishing all of the modifiers are as a melee. It's ridiculous. So I think maybe perhaps if you're saying they're over nerfed, they might be doing that with melee in mind. Range is always better in these kind of games, but melee definitely needed those nerfs to those modifiers, man. Oh, yeah, it was not good.
But melee has Fortify.
Oh, yeah. I don't know about that one, dude. That's not enough.
Yeah. Any?
Blast and bow champion builds. Anyway.
Yeah.
Does anyone have insight on the? I read somewhere, and part of this, what I'm saying now, is inferring. But like, I read somewhere that Slayer is bricked by half the mods. And correct me if I'm wrong, but what I assume is that the one mod that prevents you from regenerating or recovering more than half of your life ends your leech, because Slayer Leech says your leech does not end on full life, but because it ends on half life, it ends anyway. But I don't know whether that's...
Yeah, it's Executioner. That one is actually very noticeable. You'll notice that you just can't heal. It's very jarring, but
yeah. But it before I read what the mod does, I did not know it. Like, you notice that, oh, I'm at half life and I can't recover up, but you think like I got a really strong degen that's just perfectly mitigated by my flask or something. Like, it was so hard for me to find
all
out.
Your life flask charges trying to get your health to go back above 50%.
Yeah,
it doesn't do it.
It's it was the same issue I was running into doing the whole petrified blood life thing, and that's the thing as well, because like it really does fuck with certain interactions. Like, it's the kind of thing where I was thinking about this at League Start a couple of years ago. I'd have been like really proud of myself for playing that kind of a build, because it's a little bit wonky, and I feel like that's kind of what Path of Exile used to really promote, is like, oh, do all these silly little interactions together to get a cool benefit. Whereas now it kind of feels like the more you do stuff like that, the more you're just getting hard fucked by just like the base game itself. It's not like a situation for like, oh, I need to avoid this one boss, because there are so many degens now. Like, it's fucking ridiculous how many degens there are.
Are you talking about like what? Can you explain a little bit more what you mean? Like degen specifically? Are you talking like TS or something like that?
So you get the burning ground stuff from the altars. One of the Arch Nemesis mods like shits out a chilling ground, which also has a pretty nasty dot associated with it. And then there's just like quite a few monster base monster types which are kind of spooky, stuff like burning miscreants or whatever, or like the Tukama scorching ray guys, which individually are all fine, but like if you get that max with the other things, and then there's like a million different types of caustic cloud. And yeah, so it's like even if you're playing a build which is like also, I was immune to Ignite, but a lot of people were really struggling with Incendiary at the start of the league and stuff like that.
They have
so
like
even if you're immune
more
to Poison and you're immune to Ignite and you're immune to all this other stuff, you've then got all that other stuff going on, which is like fucking you up. And then like Grasping Vines have some some Chaos degen, and then when you break the Vine, you lose like 10% of your life, and all, like.
It is quite a lot of degens, I'll agree. Yeah. I think the one that stood out to me most was my friend's playing the Doriani's build with the Aura Stacker. What is it called? Mana Siphoner. That's a problem for that build. I'll just say that much. It basically just bricks you and kills you whenever it pops up. But yeah, that's unfortunate.
Also, I'm not sure when exactly this happened. I don't know if you guys have the same experience. I want to say it was in the last year, maybe the last 2 years. It's at a point now where half of the time I don't know what the debuffs are. Before, I used to recognize every single icon, whereas now it's quite regular. If I'm doing like proper amounts, loads of mechanics on, I'll have a bunch of debuffs. I'm like, I think I know what most of those do, but I'm not sure about like 3 of the icons or something.
On that note, though, they updated the tooltip for the Malevolence mod to now accurately tell you how much increased damage you're taking and how much less damage it's taking. When you hover it, it actually says 30%. Previously, it just said less, like reduced damage taken.
Which is great in the 0.3 seconds that you have to get your mouse up there before you die.
Right.
And read it, because as soon as you die, the icon disappears.
Yeah, true that. No, I mean, like, yeah, I was trying to be funny, because obviously it's not a big help, but hey, at least they fixed it somewhat, because previously when I hovered and it didn't say a number, I would have never guessed last league that it was 50% increased damage taken.
I think Taki makes a really good point there, because if you think about all the elemental ailments, there's obviously Ignite, Chill, Freeze, Shock, and then there's also the Delirium variants, which is Sap, Brittle, Scorch, and then there's also the specific Delirium mods, which I don't even know what they do. Then there's Impale, Bleed, Poison, and like these are just the ones that we know about, right?
Yeah.
There's so many, just like the devs have just thrown in, oh yeah, we can put a debuff on you. It's like, what are you doing, guys? I don't even know what this does.
CB is also separate from Bleed now, so that's another one. Yeah, there's so many of them.
And there's some other things. There's 2 other mods that slow you down even if you've got like combs of roots on. I still don't know what those are called, but they're like hinders, but they're not hinders.
And stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So can I actually just ask? Did anyone have a problem with stun? So I was playing a stun immune build at the start because I took on Wavering Stance, and then I took it off. And in T16 maps, sometimes I get stunned for like so long I can like count to 2. It's crazy. Does anyone have that, or is it just me?
I got stunned a lot.
Say the opposite, actually.
I got stun immune.
So I was really paranoid about stun, especially because I was doing the whole like Petrify Blood Low Life stuff at League start. So I only had like 4k base life, so I thought I'd need to put stun immunity in my build. I then lost stun immunity, and I didn't notice it. It's like maybe 1 in 30 maps, I might get like a very slight like millisecond.
Really? That's crazy.
I think it's because you're doing like the double alter shit though, aren't you? So you're taking like when you do get hit by something, it's like 150% more damage or something. So
it's quite crazy. Like even with 80k armor though, I was noticing it. So that is quite crazy. I think it might be the Bone Breaker modifier on Arcnem. I'm pretty sure that has increased stun. Maybe that's what's doing it. I'm sorry for the tangent. I just noticed it.
Yeah,
it's a good tangent. No, I was gonna say I noticed it a lot during leveling. I was leveling the summoner character I was playing instead of Absolution. I was leveling with Armor Brand Cremation because I'm more familiar with that, and I'd level it the same way that I'd do it in a hardcore race. And I had a good amount of life, therefore, right? But I still got stunned so many times in the.
Is there any DR? Because there's the mob with guaranteed stun. Like theoretically, if it has enough attack speed, can it just perma stun you, or is there DR?
Permafrost. I remember someone clipped that and put it on Reddit at the League start. Permafrost could permanently freeze you if you didn't have a freeze flask infinitely on League start. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the brown swirl above your head. I think that's what you're talking about as well, Cat.
Yeah.
Yeah, brown swirl indicates stun, yeah.
Yeah, Bone Breaker always stuns, enemy of 25% chance for double stun.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Sorry, Bella, but the double stun, that actually ignores Brine King, I'm almost certain, because I've been stun locked.
Oh, no. A dual corruption can roll up to 25% chance to avoid stuns. So
I'm stun immune now. I got the boot enchant.
Yeah, thanks, Jewel. I'm stun immune. Turns out no one values that as a corruption. So that if you've got like a few unique jewels or cluster jewels in your setup, the corruption for chance to avoid stun adds nothing to the price, and in some cases makes it lower because they were looking for like the immune to corrupting blood or RMR or like something like that, and they consider this a bricked one, but they roll up to 25 and you can get stun immune and then you're immune to stuns, so I'll take it.
That's a good tip. I think alternatively, I think you can also use Harvest enchant on the jewels, but yeah, definitely a good tip.
Yep.
Question for the Trade League plebs: is the like reduced curse effect jewel shit worth anything? Because I would use the hell out of that in SSF, like a bunch of them stacked up, but they're a pain to roll, so I never bother.
Not that I'm aware of. No,
I don't know. Never looked for them. I have it on a flask.
Most people, use it on the flask.
Yeah.
I combined flask with consecrated ground on Inquisitor. Last time I played Inquisitor, and it feels so good to get those free map mods, to get those temp chains and feeble LE weakness maps or whatever, and you're like, it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, that's great.
More and more these days, I lean towards only playing characters who don't care about map mods.
Yeah,
like that's just a thing now.
I mean, that's most characters these days, right? Like, I'm not talking at the start. Like, at the start of the league, obviously, you won't be able to do this. But once you get, like, really good gear, most characters are going to have, like, the awakened elemental damage with attacks. So, just ignore Reflect, It generally works out that way anyway.
I mean, it's the reason why I've basically only ever played traps and chaos dot builds the last, 8 years is because they can do every single modern SSF at league start. Maybe that's also why I'm now like, fuck Arch Nemesis mods, because they actually I need to play around mechanics.
Yeah, I think that's also the big part of the perception about blighted maps. I mean, I may be a little bit skewed because I'm playing the Skelly Mage Necromancer, which is exceptional at blighted maps, but I've only like lost a very small amount of blighted maps in like the ratio of blighted maps that I lost versus the ones that I was able to beat is not that high. But I feel like a lot of people got used to like doing a more or less single or dual tower strat and just, reapplying the same pattern over and over. And now we don't only have, like previously we already had these bosses in Blight, right? There's the one Kitava Herald that leaps and there's the goat that leaps. So sometimes in an unfortunate blighted map, those guys appear in quick succession and they leap through to your pump and cause you to lose the thing. And now, of course, you also have the completely immune blight monsters, right? Like things that can't be slowed or can't be stunned. Juggernaut. And that makes it even harder. But I feel like it's still doable. Maybe I just haven't done enough to really realize how unfair it is.
I mean, you're playing like one of the best builds, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
If you play Skelly Mage or Spectres, like
that was
I
my
blocked
point.
Blight after like day 2 or something, but I was failing probably about 80% of just the ones in maps on my Ice Trapper. If I was doing it as Lightning Trap now, I'd probably be fine. But it was one of those things at launch anyway that previously with Blight you could just do it from the towers. You didn't have to do anything if you knew how to set up your towers correctly. But now you have things where it's like the enemies just ignore, like you get stun immune mobs, and then your Earthquake Tower does nothing. I was like, all right, cool, like great.
Yeah, and that's why you have Earthquake Towers and Chill Towers.
And then they're immune to chill.
Yeah, and then you have Ice Prisons.
Well, fuck you.
Yeah, no, it's for blighted encounters in maps. It's actually really impossible to have a good tower diversity, like several types of tier 4 towers. That's really unrealistic to have because those blight encounters in maps are just that short. But for blighted maps, it can work. I actually have to say I lost a lot of blights in maps as well, but I always chalked it down to greedy map rolling, right? Like when I have like turbo maps, monsters, movement speed, cast speed, attack speed, yeah, then they just run past me. But generally, when they don't have survivability mods or speed mods, it's fine.
That does have a... Oh, go ahead, sorry, Bella.
I was just gonna. I've lost a ton of blight maps in my actual maps by blocking the blight encounter. You should try it. Shit. I'm gonna just get rid of it. I'll just buy my oils, man.
I think, for me at least, over the last few leagues, they do seem to be pushing quite a lot more threatening modifiers in the game, whether it's expedition or what we're seeing here. So overall, I've been building a lot more defensive characters, and it's been much better. I'm not playing a character now unless it's got 100% avoid ailment and 100% spell suppression at end game, and it can run at least determination or grace, one or the other. And I think there's a few builds and build guides that are they're from the last era, which don't have those, and they are just made of paper now. They just don't really hold up as well as some of the new age builds. And I think Skeleton Mages might be due for a little bit of another look in terms of the defense. I've heard a few people saying it's quite difficult to get levels on that build. That might be what the blight problem is. If you die, obviously, it can be quite challenging.
Well, I built it quite defensively. Like, don't have any offensive auras or anything. But yeah, certainly. I mean, my defenses are very, very softcore trade oriented at this point.
Yeah, you can also you can Aegis block cap on that build, but that's not what most guides are, right? Because they're older ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's challenging to get a good balance of defense and offense. It's especially when you're trying to play on a budget.
But what I wasn't exactly able to tell from what you just shared, do you think that's positive? You think it's better overall that the game presses you into making a more well-rounded build?
Okay, so do you want me to open up the can of worms? Because this is
because I want to dive in on that because I don't think it go. Okay.
Okay, so inherently, I believe the problem with Path of Exile currently and its difficulty and the way they've done it is that it's just too accessible to get to the difficulty. So on day 2, we'll call it day 2 because I didn't sleep. On day 2, I was doing both of the Altar Keystones in T16 maps, Chislaug Vald on day 2, and my character was not wearing good gear. And I was dying 4 or 5 times the map, and I just did it because it was the best money possible. And it didn't feel good. It didn't feel fun, but I did it. And people were trying the Uber bosses because you just can, right? Like you don't have any prerequisite. There's no gating behind it, and you're gonna have probably a pretty bad time. There's some advantages to that, but it doesn't really like for example in World of Warcraft, you can't be level 60 and go do a level 120 raid because you're just gonna get absolutely blitzed. But in Path of Exile, you certainly can. You can go put that keystone on at level 70 and buy the Shaper set and go get blasted. So yeah, I think you can make the game way too hard for yourself and have a bad time. That's the general gist of it.
So when you were saying like making more well-rounded characters, I don't think we have more well-rounded characters. This is something I really want to talk to Chris about, but unfortunately, Chris isn't involved in balance. So whenever I try and talk to him about balance stuff on Baycast, he's like, look, if you want, you can ask me the question, but I'm not going to have a satisfying answer for you. I think we're in a weird state in Path of Exile where there's not really enough defensive modifiers, and it's basically a situation of you put this package of Grace, Determination, Defiance Banner, Spell Suppression, and or Block. Some people do both. And then the only real like options in terms of defense are like timeless jewel setups or very specific like unique jewels or unique chase uniques. And that feels so backwards to me, especially from an SSF point of view. Because it's one of those things of it feels like any build which isn't running that core package is shit. And then even if you're like, oh, I'm going to go really hard on evasion and I'm not going to use armor, I'm just going to do evasion, I'm going to use ghost dance, have some ES. You then have stuff which just like always hits. And then it's like, all right, cool. So my evasion does nothing. So what was the point?
I think just to kind of tie it into what I was saying earlier, Taki, like, would you say that your character is very well geared right now?
I have the highest damage like trap in SSF.
Yeah, defense.
Defensively, 20k armor, 20k evasion, 1k ES, ghost dance.
What I'm trying to get at is, if I gave you like another 2 weeks, how much further could you push that character? You could push it pretty much, like a lot further. Right?
Yeah.
And would you say that you're currently doing the hardest content in the game for Path of Exile right now? Like
everything except for Ubers, yeah.
Yeah.
So do the Uber bosses, yeah.
Your character is not progressed to the point where it should be at doing that content yet, right? Like you're doing content which is too hard.
No, exactly. It's like if I kept completely. If I spent the next 2 weeks doing the same content I'm doing now, accepting deaths but getting more gear, I'd be in a situation where I'm still doing it at the same speed. I just wouldn't be dying. That'd be the only difference.
Yeah. But if you went back to tier 11 maps, which perhaps is what your character is currently suitable for, and you did those maps, it probably would be a complete joke. You'd have plenty of defense, you'd have plenty of damage, and be great. It's just you can jump straight to T16, double altar, double keystones, and it's like, okay, let's go, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. I notice that all the time. I go back like 2 map levels, and it's a complete joke.
So here's the problem. I agree entirely. I've said a billion times. And every time I say it, Reddit crucifies me for it. It's probably because I don't know how to phrase things without upsetting people. But I keep saying getting to tier 16 maps and just sustaining your map pool at 216 has been way too easy for way too long. Like, it shouldn't just be accepted that everyone is up there, because that's where the danger is.
Yep.
Like, we should have way more of a struggle to get there. Like, way more of a struggle to get there.
And it's kind of...
it always upsets people, and I think it's because I'm explaining shit the wrong way, but it is how I feel.
It's kind of weird, because it used to be like that. Just one quick interjection, because Chris always emphasizes how the hard content needs to have a cost associated with it because of their experience with the Maelstrom of Chaos back in the days.
I mean, that's like a whole separate topic. You're talking about the Uber Keystones not having any cost associated with it and stuff like that.
Well, no, but it ties into the same topic, because, like you just said, people go into the hard content way too soon because there's no cost associated with it.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
It's basically the core problem that you brought up.
Yeah, it's actually a negative cost, right? Because if you don't do the hard content, then you're losing something. Like, if you've got an altar there and it's like 2% chance for Eldritch Monsters to give Scarabs, and it's going to make you die 4 times, you're still going to click it, right? Like, who's not going to click that? I would click it.
I'm not clicking anything that makes me die. I want levels now. I'm so jaded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's pretty rough.
the thing with what you were saying, Balor, is I don't necessarily disagree with you from a philosophical point of view. I think the issue is with Path of Exile, especially if you look back at Path of Exile when it comes to like having access or limited access to the end game. We used to have limited access to the end game because it was just difficult to sustain tier 16 maps. And I don't think the struggle should be in sustaining the content. I think the struggle should be in getting to that content comfortably. Because I think there's a very big difference between saying to someone, we're going to make everything a lot harder, and there's like more check marks, like you have to beat this boss or something to unlock this next tier of maps or whatever your caveat is, to when you get to tier 16, then it's not going
to you do have to do that. You have to kill Eater of Worlds and Exarch to do that. Just saying.
Well, yeah, piss, but like you know, that's theoretically, if they weren't piss, you know. So, and also it's the situation as well with what you're saying is with the way the Atlas tree works now. If you were to theoretically put like a massive gate in like tier 11 maps or whatever you decide is the threshold, you're then like gating people from all of their points to then like actually block the league mechanics they want. And this is also one thing as well, which I find a bit weird, is in a weird way, I find it harder. What am I trying to say? I don't like the placement of where they've put the blocking mechanics. I feel like they've made my Atlas trees way more limited and way more restrictive than the ones I was making last league. Because it's like I have to spend all these points at the start on either side. I kind of wish they were on a middle node somewhere. I don't know.
Do you always go into the middle? I feel like everyone's Atlas tree is at the beginning. That's why I'm like, if it was in the middle, then it would be way harder to have tree diversity like that. Yeah, I mean, I guess you'd have to chop off a couple of points from your finished.
In the old trees I was making like last league, I'd be like, do I want to do stuff on the right? Do I want to do stuff on the left? Do I want to jump down the middle? Whatever. I could just go right. Whereas now it's like I always have to come left and spend those 10 points or 15 points, however many it is, to block out all these other league mechanics. I have to spend those.
I really think they should have come off the bottom, by the way. Like, they should have been available as my first points directly off the bottom, all of them just in a little set, where I can just turn them off for 1 point.
Are you guys using the node with the where you don't put fragments and no scarabs? And fragments are scarabs, scarabs are fragments. The ones where you have like 50% increased base chance for other mechanics to spawn?
I mean, I am, but that's because I'm stockpiling stuff in SSF.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I actually was, until today, I was using it the whole time. I think that node is actually completely crazy. I think it's better than what it reads, though. I'm not 100% sure on this, but I'm pretty sure, you know, like the little nodes, like it'll be like 1% chance for Delirium Mirror on your tree. I think those count as base chance, and then the 50% multiplies that. You were thinking it too? It feels like that. I was like,
I think.
I would not be surprised if it was like that, yeah.
I'm almost certain.
I have too many delirium orbs for it not to be, it feels like. I don't have any way to prove it, but...
Well, you could run 100 maps and like record how many you get. It feels way higher than 50% chance to get a Deli Mirror, though, with all the nodes. So I'm almost certain it works that way, which makes it completely ridiculous for stuff like Harvest. Like, it's like better than using the Harvest on Xana, right? Because you have for free every other map. So to answer your question, yes.
I haven't used it up until today. I've spent the last and a little bit yesterday, because I was doing 60% deli right away for Scarab Sextants, which is a ton of money. Not Sextants, Scarab Orbs, 60%. So because of that, I needed to juice the hell out of it, right? Yeah. So I really hadn't played with that keystone myself until like yesterday. And then I'm like, so much stuff is spawning. Why have I been buying Scarabs? I mean, I've got a trader, so I wasn't. But like, why? Why am I juicing when I can just take this one node? The maps juice themselves.
It's true, really it is. We were talking, and like people running Expedition were just like they couldn't buy the Scarabs early, so they just ran the Stream of Conscious. It's like ghetto Scarabs.
I mean,
now it's 50% e-maps. Okay.
SSF, I haven't used any Scarabs. I very rarely even bother using Sextants, and until yesterday, I was a full Expedition Legion tree. It would be rare for me not to have one of those two mechanics on a map. Like if I went to Ep and it didn't have one of those two mechanics, I'd be like, why the fuck didn't that spawn? That's really strange. Mm-hmm. It's nearly like every map I'd have both. It's strong.
Yeah, it's really good. It's crazy, especially with like stuff like Essence and Strongboxes. It's really good.
Yeah, because it scales all of that stuff as well. Like I have The only real investment I have into strong boxes is just the guaranteed corrupted boxes, and I'm still getting like 5 or 6 corrupted boxes in every map. So good.
Yeah, it's really good.
So if you happen to be right in the center of the Atlas tree, where everybody is, the 2 points to grab the essences of 1 tier higher is worth it, even if you have no investment in essences, because there's going to be like 2 or 3 in every map because of the stream of consciousness node.
Mm-hmm.
So it just makes them all decent essences for nothing.
Yeah, we'll get to this later, but essences are really, really good now. They're starting to come back up in price because they were worth nothing at the start. But now that it's like, and the reason for that is recombinators. But I'll wait until later.
Oh yeah.
Oh, we might actually move into the league mechanic right now. Why not?
Look, if we're starting with Sentinel, I need to start by complaining about Grim.
Oh,
I could do that.
We gotta complain.
Oh.
What are we complaining about?
Listen,
His personality?
I watched his personality. We watched one of your videos, Grim, and it said about recombinating the little robot dudes. And you were like, you need to have the magic robot dudes. Magic robot dudes are great for like, you can smash together good stuff. So I turned on magic robots.
Oh, too many, right?
And I have yellow robots turned off entirely because I'm not using them. I only have red and blue robots. And in 4 maps, I picked up 69 robots. And it filled my stash tab up. I can't affinity them into my I just had to turn them back off. It is your fault. My stash tab is full of blue robots.
I mean, look, it's worth it, but you shouldn't be doing it like that. So, Catching Tuna, the streamer, he also had a similar problem because he's doing the Tropical Island Delirium strat. And what he does is he brings in like a stack of wisdom scrolls. He'll pick it up, ID it, check for expedition or sentinel or currency, and then just chuck it back on the floor if it's not good. And he'll just do it like that. That's the way you got to do it.
Oh no!
It's just too many.
How long did you guys take?
For the record, sorry.
No,
I fucking spoke to Chris about this. I'm like, 2x2, it's going to be an issue. Like, do we have space? He's got loads of space. So what are you talking about? He's got massive. Its own locker.
20 in the locker.
Fucking lockers.
I filled that locker in 4 maps.
Fucking huge locker, mate. You're never going to fill that up.
And not only that, there's no affinity on my stash tab. So I can't be like, here's my 8 quad tabs. I'll just put an affinity here. And then when it fills, I'll move the affinity to the next one and I'll just move it on. And then at the end of the day, I'll deal with all of them. No, can't do that. No affinity there. The only affinity is in this tiny little locker that only holds like 3 things. Like,
It's the same with Heist and Expedition, by the way. If you don't have those lockers, like you can't put the affinities on a regular stash tab, which is so frustrating. I mean, yeah, you have the lockers because they're not gated behind a paywall or anything. But like, why do we not have the affinities?
But the one thing that makes it worse is that it's such a good league mechanic that I enjoy using, that it's not an option for me to turn it off entirely and not deal with it, because it's way too good, it's way too rewarding, and it's way too fun, and I'm in control of it, and I love it. It's a great league, but your locker system is shit, and why are they 2x2s, and also why is there such limited size, and
So you're saying if we nerfed the fun, it would solve the problem?
Don't remove the fun.
I could text Bex now. Like, we can get this fixed, Balor. We can solve this
This is
problem.
not the way I'd like to fix it. How about 1x1s?
No.
Okay, so I think you feel the pain, but I think it actually requires a different solution. If I was them, I would reduce the amount of sentinels that drop from monsters naturally, because when you start stacking quantity, it just gets out of control with the Delirium Mirror. I would increase the chance of getting good modifiers, which are Acceleration Shrine. Why is that even on there? And I would also make it so that doing the actual like empowered monsters drops more of the sentinels. So like you get less from normal mapping, but more from using sentinels, and like you can perpetuate things. And the overall outcome should be you don't get so many, but you get better ones. And that I think would solve most of the problems.
And the same amount of good ones we've got now, and they don't need to be buffed at all. Right? It's just the same amount of good ones, but instead of having to pick up 90 to get one really good one, I have to pick up 10 to get one really good one.
How long did you take to hide the white ones on your filter? Like after league start?
I did it before the league started.
You were smart.
Target wins.
I did not. Day 1, I was in yellow maps when I hit them.
I mean, I just don't understand why they can be white. Actually, it's a little bit unusual that you have to take that node on the tree to make a magic, because you would never use a white one. There's literally
Yeah,
no
you'd not
purpose.
use a white one, and you also not power core a white one, because like outside of random mutation, there's nothing to be gained from it, right? You could randomly combine 2 white ones into a blue one, or a magic one, I should say.
Yeah, but we don't get nearly enough of the power cores to be like picking up the white ones and combining them.
It's not worth it. You get like so many. Like the thing is, even if you only pick up yellow ones, you have more than you need for using.
That's me. I only pick up yellow ones. So I went into this league. Well, this is the thing. So I went into the league really worried about the micromanagement. I have been really enjoying Sentinel. I think they missold this league massively. I think the league they like advertise compared to what is like vastly different. Because I'm like, okay, there's gonna be these 3 different things I need to fucking manage. I'm always gonna have to be picking them up. I'm always gonna have to be upgrading them. I'm always gonna be doing this. Even now, I know I should be picking up either blue ones, but like just picking up rare ones. I've got like a quad tab full. My lockers are completely full. I can never run all of them. And even with me like only running the good rare ones that I pick up, I will never run all of them. So it's just like one thing which irritates me a little bit is in the Q&A. Ziggy asked like what was the deal with charges, and Chris said that originally there weren't charges, but then they thought it was boring because it's like once you got a good one, you just never had a good one. And it feels like when they made that change, they then didn't like do any other follow-up changes to how the mechanic kind of functioned. They were just like, oh, we'll just have it so like they have charges now, maybe like make more drop.
If they didn't have charges, I think the mechanic would suck. I would say that.
Really?
Yep, I agree.
See, I would have seen it more because it's kind of got this whole like Pokemon IV EV breeding. I think it would have led more into the breeding mechanic.
I think I'd already be done with the league. Honestly, I'd be moving on to other things. It would just be so boring.
Because you'd have your best in slot Sentinels by now, like with like very marginal improvements left to be made.
So we have someone on our team that's just gathering all of the robots from all of us and then spending a few hours while he's supposed to be working, just like breeding them on a side monitor to get good ones and just throws only the good ones back in. If there were no charges, every single person on my whole team would just be wearing like best in slot ones already. Now we'd just be done. I'd hide them all, turn them off.
There would
no
be
more
like,
upgrades for the rest of the league.
I mean, they could make it so that certain mods can only spawn after X generations of breeding, and that they add more randomness. You could make it.
I'll let you guys go. The way I would see it functioning is kind of. Do you remember in Heist League, it used to be a thing of like you would craft like perfect like lockdown reduction or like job arming speed or whatever. That's like you'd have to have more interesting mods. So it's kind of like you're building like. Oh, I'm gonna build the perfect like pandemonium for specifically like breach, and then it's like I'm gonna build like the perfect apex for that. And I think if they didn't have a charge-based system, I think people would be more likely to actually like not just use the same strat the whole way through. Just like, oh, I'm just gonna use pandemonium with the sentinel or whatever. Because like apex is in a fucking terrible spot. Whereas I don't know if I like could make a really sick apex, then maybe I'll be like, I'll put apex in for like Maven running or something, or like. Rogue Exile setups I've seen some people do.
Put Apex into Maven? Or you mean like the Crucibles?
The Crucibles.
Yeah. Okay, I thought like you can't use it in Pinnacle boss fights anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how long you want to spend on this topic because it's not exactly the lead mechanic, but I'm firmly in the camp that I like that they have charges. So
how is it not exactly league mechanic? But anyway, yeah, I think we talked a lot about the charges. Which type of Sentinel do you predominantly use? What's your favorite one, Grim?
Me? Ooh.
I mean, you're the guy who understands Sentinel, as I've been told.
Are you asking me which one's the best, or are you asking me which one's the most fun?
Well, why not both? Is it a different answer?
The blue one is definitely the most fun to use if you're not playing minions, with the exception of skeletons. The red one is the best one, though. That is my answer. Yeah.
Okay, why is the red ones on?
Nope.
No.
They're not on my filter.
Mine either.
I also have them hidden. However, I haven't released my video on it yet, but I can tell you the yellow ones are good.
No, you can't tell me that. I don't have room to pick them up. Please don't tell me that.
Yeah, I was using all 3 of them, and
that's fine.
And farming maps like Courtyard where you get triple bosses, or at least Strand, where you got a double boss and then use an Apex Sentinel that can empower several enemies. And I mean, it wasn't bad. Like I can't say I did extensive testing and spreadsheets and stuff like that. But from a pure feeling point of view, if you have the damage that it doesn't significantly increase your boss kill time for the map boss, then it's worth it. I mean, it's always a good chunk of extra loot.
To me, the problem is not that it wouldn't be worth using it on a boss. The problem is that if I have to take its little electric skill tree thing that I can't remember the name of and extend it all the way over to yellow, then my two really good fun sentinels become more shit.
Right.
I don't want to do that.
There's the thing of if you do put points into the yellow, like assuming you're not doing it for Mate of Increase or like a specific setup where you're purposely like running through maps only tagging the bosses. If you're doing like a normal mapping gameplay, I find them too slow, especially like with the boss specific ones. I don't want to be a situation where it's like I have my yellow dude out, I go up to the boss, I've taken half the boss's life down, then the boss full heals once it's done being empowered, then I've got to go through that again. I'm a stalker only gamer, and I've been a stalker only gamer from day one, and it's fucking slaps. Yeah.
You don't like the Pandemonium one? I think that one's the most fun.
Pandemonium is cool on paper, and I can definitely see the situation where it's like probably if you're super min-maxing it really good. But the stalker one, ease of use, you just press at the start of the map, boom, you sort it.
I don't remember the names. Yeah. Red, blue, which one's which?
Red is Stalker, blue is Pandemonium.
Right, okay.
So I think you missed out on some fun, Tarky, honestly.
No, I definitely agree. So this was the thing is like because I went into the league from the point of view of I didn't think I was going to enjoy the league at all. So like I didn't do any alpha test or anything. It's not like I had any insider information. I didn't talk to anyone who did anything. It's like I went into the league like, okay, this is probably going to be a league pack I'm not that into. So before the league even starts, I'm going to filter out anything that's white. I'm not going to bother with anything but the red one. That one seems easy. So that's the only one I had on my filter. And then I spec'd only into the red one, because that was also the other thing as well, as I didn't know how long it would take to get a fully leveled up thing. So I was like, I'll just rush to the good rewards. So I got the good rewards even when I was like in the axe. And then I was mapping, I'm like, okay, this seems pretty cool, like whatever. And then whenever you put out your video and like, oh, this league, hi guys, Grim here, and you're like, this mechanics, whatever, you know. And you're like, Stalker's lit, and I'm like, all right, cool, like I'm not stupid, like apparently Stalker's lit, so I keep going through it. And the other thing which is cool about the Stalker, especially at League launch in SSF, is empowering white monsters, yay. Screw empowering essences and arch nemesis and that. Empower the white monsters, kill them, still get nice rewards, let's go.
Yeah.
And then since then, I've been like, oh, maybe I should spec back into Pandemonium, but I'm like, in an SSF environment, am I ever going to have the like super Giga Chad perfectly breeded Pandemonium ones? No. Whereas I can.
That's a statement. You do not need the perfect Giga Chad OP Pandemonium Sentinels to have insane fun and rewards from them.
I get insane rewards from the red ones. I don't need to do anything.
But you have both of them. It's fun. Like,
yeah, but I've got to press things.
Fair enough.
I've got to do things. You know.
All right. The last thing on those trees that I have to say is I think. This is going to get me in trouble. I'm probably wrong. Here we go. I think that Grim's tree for the specking it is wrong.
Okay, what do you have?
Why? Because it's not my red-only tree?
Since taking the rewards are more likely to be less common node, which I only had to change your tree slightly to get, I've gotten way more really good rewards like ritual stuff and things like that. That less common node, I think it is a huge mistake to not have less common. I think you're just missing a ton of rewards. Doesn't change your gameplay at all. It's only a very small change to your tree, but it is a very big change to the loot you get.
Isn't the argument against that you're missing out on just like currency, because currency is like a common reward?
Yeah, so there's like a few different ways to actually approach this. We've spoken at length. I play with multiple people, and we're like in Discord, and we're like talking through all this stuff all the time. And the discussion which comes up about that one is that, first of all, it's multiple points to invest in it, which could be spent somewhere else, which is more than likely going to be increasing your loot in other ways. And the less likely you're being deceived, because I've got like rough estimated value on most of the reward types, and I can tell you when you're talking about ritual and you're like, whoa, ritual, that is one of the worst reward types.
I said ritual and I meant expedition.
Okay, expedition, sure. You do have a higher chance of getting expedition. Let's just say it's like twice as good though, right? Twice as good. It's still not that good because most of the rewards you get come from the specific role on the Sentinel. Like if you've got like a 3% chance for Sentinel rewards, like the lion's share of your earnings comes from that. So wouldn't you rather amplify that rather than like try and get other weird rewards? There's a different topic if you're talking about the yellow ones. If you're trying to talk about yellow ones, it's a mandatory node. For blue and red, I think it's, if you want to take it, go for it. If not, I don't think it's a big deal.
Are you sure it doesn't affect things like giving me the rarer expedition rewards, like not
Certainly
the Astrogalies that I've got
not.
300 of?
That is definitely not actually how it works at all. It's the icon that you're getting.
I'm not sure about that part either, but it feels like I'm getting way more. And obviously, I don't take data and I don't take spreadsheets, so all I have to go on is how my shit feels. But taking that less common feels suddenly like I'm getting near double the amount of expedition rewards that I was getting before.
But like, to be fair though, isn't that the same deal as like if you were to spec into the strongboxes drop double currency? It's like whenever you get it, you're like, oh, this feels lit because I just dropped like 1 million. Whereas is that actually worth the point investment? You got to like think about it from that kind of point of view. I will say though, as someone who uses the less lucky thing, I think it's good, and especially for SSF or trade league players who don't trade for everything, I think it's particularly good when you're blocking out most of the league mechanics because it still means you're getting some access to like blight oils or whatever. So from that point of view, I rate it quite highly.
I can confirm it does not alter the loot that drops on the floor. Source, I run unique Apex Sentinels with that node, and the Scarab drop rate didn't give me additional gilded. That's it's ironclad. All right, it's the icon on their head.
Right. Absolutely.
So I'm just dropping this in here. I'll put it in chat too so people can see it because this is my one.
To bring up on screen?
Yeah, if you want. This is my one, and I took it from your video and then only slightly changed it. I only changed a few nodes to keep
I can't. I don't want it. It's you dropped the most important node on the tree. Okay.
Which one? Which one?
You have to take found normal rarity sentinels and upgrade to magic. I understand why you didn't because you get way too many of them.
Magic ones.
All right, what's the next topic, Cat? We need the next topic, dude.
But to take that one back, you only need to drop the one on the far left, the one that hangs off on its own. You can get rid of that one and take the magic one again.
All right, do you have...
Explain to us, Grim, why do you need the one that upgrades the normal to magic?
But I've got an omniscience and a headhunter.
Okay, well, maybe you don't need it then. If he's just playing for fun, I think, it's fine to hide the magic ones. I think it's okay.
You just got fucking shit on. I play SSF. I play SSF, but if a trade league player says to you, if you're just playing for fun, that means I fucking hate you and you're scum. That's what Grim actually said. He said, "Fuck you, fuck your skill tree."
What the? Look, man, I'm just saying, if you find an Expedition Sentinel and it's magic and it's literally got only Expedition mod on it, it's worth an Exalt or more. And it's like, okay, let's leave them on the floor, boys.
Okay, but I picked them up for 3 days and found 0. And it's 3 extra portals per map just to bring them out.
No, but
I have to ID them all in the map. Oh, man.
Look, you don't have to do it. That's what I'm saying. If you don't want to do it, I'm not going to tell you to do it. But it is a lot of money. That's the difference in our tree. I think it's fine. Yeah.
But even if let's you're definitely right about that. So let's say you're right about that, and that I should have magic ones on. That's still only we take 2 points out of the far left there, put them into the magic one. It's
so the
very slightly different from your tree then.
15% increased number of enemies empowered by Pandemonium Sentinels, and it's just because we're running different strategies. My strategy involves all my loot coming from Sentinels. Yours doesn't. Mm-hmm. That's the reason why I'm all invested in the Pandemonium.
Because 15% likely thing, I think.
Yeah, let me go for it. Can I just say? Good. With all the Arc Nemesis stuff and this conversation, all stuff like that, this is my favorite league in a long time. It's because you have so many different play styles. Like Tarky's playing with only the red one. Balor's playing super juice maps with this different tree. That's the beauty of the league, and I think it's great. I love it. I love it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly really like it. I really enjoy it when there's like different takes on the game, but everyone who represents one take thinks that they are right and the other ones may not be. That's when the game is in a
I
good
will be
state.
sad if Sentinel doesn't come back. And it's been a while since I could say that about a League mechanic.
It's pretty unanimously loved so far. Like, I don't know anyone who doesn't like it, who has given it a good shot.
I've talked to Tanky about it, and Tanky really hates it.
Yep. He's the one person, actually. I did see his video. He is the one person.
Oh, but he still does it
main
because he
thing
said
just quality of life, though.
Yeah, he said it's disgustingly rewarding, and it's just the Sentinels are too slow, in his opinion, for like fast clearing builds. He says if you play a good build, then the Sentinels hold you back.
I'm playing a munitions tornado shot, and they get in front of me. How quick do they need to be?
I will say on my shitty lightning trapper, omniscience by the way,
Whoa.
I kill stuff quicker. I have to say it's fucking hilarious having that shit in SSF. People get so triggered. I didn't even I dropped it from my first Searing Exarch, and I didn't even use it for 4 days. It just sat in my stash.
Oh, people got so triggered, I bet.
It was brilliant. It was so good.
No, because those both amulets, if I'm correct, in trade, they were like day 2 or day 3, they were like 30x, then they went down to 14, and now they're up at 40.
They started at 9?
I bought my ashes for 8 slots on day 1 and a bit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, somewhere it went up to that. It doesn't start at the high one, but when I first checked it day 2 or 3, it was at 30, I believe. I can bring up the graph on the thing. Please continue.
Actually, I wanted to ask you guys about this, so now that we talk about it, I'm curious because I've seen the sentiment from quite a lot of people who they're saying that part of the reason why they're quitting the league or they're not playing the league is because of the prices of Ashes and Omni, and they resent the fact they're chase uniques. That seems really stupid to me, but I come from an SF point of view of I don't expect to get unique items. So from a trade league perspective, how do you feel about it?
Look, okay, I think the problem is with the way that the league was presented. Chris said no changes, all the build guides work, and every build guide had Ashes and Omni in it because they are so just overwhelmingly powerful. Like every build used it, and then everyone rocks up with their league starter, many of which require the amulet, and it's 45x, and it's like, well, shit, So they kind of got they missold that league in that regard.
That's fair.
That's a fair take, yeah.
I agree, and I think that problem would have been fixed if they had said, hey, we're not changing anything except we're making this like way rarer because it's too powerful, and we knew that ahead of time. That would have been fine. However, what I find really important is I actually absolutely love the way they handled those amulets, and I hope and I want them to, in the future, always introduce really powerful items in that vein. I would like that the league, a really powerful item gets given to us, that it is really common, accessible to everyone, super powerful, only 1x item. And then the next league roll back into making it a chase item if there are more like super powerful things like that. I think that's a really good way to do it for 2 reasons. 1, it lets everybody play with it before it becomes a chase item. And 2, it lets you find the extreme abuse cases because 1 billion people are playing it. Probably 100,000 people are playing it, whatever. And that lets you find all the little broken bits that you weren't quite aware of and fix them if you want. But I really like the idea of just giving it to everyone and then making it a chase thing.
Yeah, and also if you consider what is the other option, they could either, like, in order to balance the obviously broken state of those things, they could either make it a real chase item, make it super rare, so that it's balanced that way, that the huge power that it represents is offset by the huge price, or they could have nerfed it into the ground and kept the drop rates the same, and I think people would have not liked that.
So I can get like a reference point, how much is like a Mage Blood or a Headhunter or something?
Headhunter is 55x, I believe, and Mage Blood is 175.
Okay, so like an Omni is the same price as a Headhunter is like 3 Omnis to a Mage Blood, alright.
When I bought my Headhunter, it was 30.
Yeah, I think people are anticipating a buff, but I'm not sure.
What's your take on... I don't think I've heard you talk about Headhunter, Grim.
Okay, so I'm pretty flexible with builds and all sorts of stuff like that. They've killed my build more times than I care to admit, over and over again. So when something gets nerfed, I'm pretty numb to it. Headhunter has been overpowered and warped the game, I might add, as well, for years, like almost the game's entire life. So honestly, it's dead. It's completely trash. Sorry, Bella, it's garbage.
I've been wearing it for 4 days.
It's not good, but
with a
overall,
sentinel tree like that, of course you would.
overall, like it's fine. Like I am completely fine with it personally. Like they're adding plenty of new uniques, which are quite frankly more balanced and in a lot of ways more interesting, like Omniscience, which I'm completely okay with it. Although I know for a fact most of my friends are very sad about it.
Headhunter buff will make it fine next week. Don't worry about it.
When you say trash, like, give me some, like, where is it at?
All right, here, let me give you an example. So before, a single player used to be able to do the five emblem encounter with 6 full players by themselves with a headhunter.
Mm-hmm.
Now they can no longer do that, and they need to use an aura bot as well. Like it's that big a difference. It's literally an entire another character that you've lost of power. Like an aura bot, no less. It's garbage.
So here's the thing. I don't disagree with any of that. It's all 100% right. Except that it's not nearly as trash as people are making out to be, because it really depends on what level of bullshit content you're trying to do. The harder the bullshit content you're trying to do is, the less good Headhunter is now. If you slap a Headhunter at its 30x price tag into your Alkan Go strat, it's actually pretty fantastic. It doesn't really make me faster, but it makes me significantly tankier, and it makes me do significantly more damage. I'm still getting, in my Alkan Go strat, I'm getting the same amount of buffs as I was in my 60% double Beyond Delirious maps. So when you're at a lower level of investment, Headhunter still feels pretty good, although it doesn't give me speed.
What like the average
you invest,
sort of mobs
the worse
you
it
get
gets.
now? Like what do you kind of get?
I sit at about 14 in an Alkan Go map, 14-ish buffs at a time, and then
like,
my 60% delirious
do?
maps. Oh god. Here's the big problem: they're not seeable.
Right.
They're seeable.
Regen and damage reduction and all these sort of things, but it's not like 150,000 energy shield. Instead, I've got 90 max res, 90 chaos res, free spell suppression given to me, 50% reduced damage taken of all 3 of these elements, and 12% regen, but you can't see any of it, right? Because my health barely changes. It goes from like 3,800 to 4,100, and I don't gain any energy shield, and I don't look tanky, but I am.
Okay.
It's okay. So let me. This is gonna nail home the point. Like I'm not gonna labor the point to Ballard because he obviously enjoys the item still, and I think that's good. But Tuna, the absolute headhunter lover, is using Perseverance instead of the belt, and it's not obviously he can afford it, right?
Yeah.
He's using the Onslaught belt. That's how bad it is. So it's pretty dead.
Last thing is, I think it's worth its price tag at what it's at now. I think at what it's at right now, it is still absolutely worth its price tag. It's still worth having, and it is still pretty fun. On an unlimited budget, I don't see any build ever wearing it.
Doesn't it give like 130 stats?
Yeah, but I can get those stats off a Mage Blood.
Well, no, but I was just saying, like, if it was ever going to be like, okay, aren't you getting extra value out of it because you're an Omniscience build, so you're getting like that big chunk of stats?
Yeah, but I could get a double 18% increased Temple belt for like 10C. And that gives me like 300 more Omniscience than the Headhunter belt.
Look, okay. I don't want to stay too much on this because I'm obviously the negative Nancy, the pooper here. But opportunity cost belt slot is high because Stygian Vice, Perseverance, Mage Blood, or like anything is good, right? You can use an Inspired Learning and get the majority of the power of Headhunter from one dual socket. So it's not good.
I do think you need 2 Inspireds, but I'm still going to agree. 2 Inspireds is not nearly as good as my Headhunter, which is probably the biggest problem right now.
And then run Biscuit.
I'm wearing a Headhunter, but I could just wear 2 Inspireds and put on a Rampage belt, and I'd probably be better.
Yeah, sounds about right. They did say, though, that they don't want Headhunter to be significantly nerfed as a consequence of this change, and they're looking into it, so we could definitely see a buff coming in there.
It's going to get better next week.
I mean...
I don't think it's going to happen.
You don't think it's going to happen?
No.
I don't think it's going to go back to its former glory, but I think they're definitely going to make it better than it is right now.
I wouldn't bet on it, but like I wouldn't be surprised if maybe next league. I'd be surprised if something this league happened to affect Headhunter.
But there was 2 posts about it.
Yeah.
No, they said like we're looking into it, we're thinking about it. Doesn't mean they're gonna fucking do anything.
I mean, okay, there's no way they didn't know they were killing it. I'll say that for a fact. There is no, there's no way. There's no way they didn't know it was dying. Maybe Chris didn't know, but Neon definitely knew. He knew. So it was intentional. And I completely understand why. Like, how can you balance difficulty in the end game where anything involves rares with Headhunter existing? You can't. Do you want that in Path of Exile 2? Probably not.
All right. But the reason that I enjoy the Headhunter belt so much, and the reason I want it, and the reason it's always been good, I don't want to deal with a power struggle. By the time I get to the point where I put my Headhunter on, I want to be a god all the time, everywhere. That's the thing.
You can still achieve that, though, in a more balanced state with Mage Blood, because you basically become unkillable, and you still get the speed. You just don't get the damage. And the damage really was the problem, because you could trivialize content like the 5 ways I was talking about earlier. Like, no single player should be able to carry 6 men HP with 1 item, right? Like, theoretically.
And it has no, like, it's exponential. You know, it can just keep going. It's like when you do stuff like Ultimatum, or what trial, whatever that thing, the end thing was.
Yeah, Taki is right. And, like, look, it's been a long time coming, right? They've been slowly nipping at the heels. You know, we lost, like, Self-Curse, all sorts of, like, it's been coming. It's been coming. But, yeah, that's enough from me on Head on Off.
Well... The way that the communication from them reads for me is that they're definitely going to change something. But, you know, I also thought that they're definitely going to make further adjustments to Scourge League. So,
okay, so
go on. I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that I can not fix it back to its old level, but I'm pretty sure the solution to Headhunter is really, really obvious to make it worth a 100x belt again. Just make it refresh the duration of the buffs. Its biggest problem right now is not the fact that the buffs are shit. The buffs are great. And if I could have all of them all of the time, it would be fantastic. It is still a ton of damage. It is still fantastic. It's just that if I have a Gargantuan mod right now on my character, and then I encounter a rare pack, and it's beyond and everything, and in that pack, there's 6 more Gargantuans, and I kill all of them, and then 2 seconds later, the Gargantuan that I stole 20 seconds ago leaves. And now it's gone. But I just killed 6 of those mobs.
Yeah.
And it's gone now.
So, Firegrass said in chat exactly what I was going to say. This is why, like, so the post, we're aware that this change is an implicit nerf to the Headhunter unique. And that's them talking about reducing the amount of Arch Nemesis mods, right? So we'll find a way to counter buff. So they're not saying, like, counter buff to 317. They're saying counter off it to where it was at earlier in the league. So the way I read that is like, try and get you as many Arch Nemesis mods as you had at league launch. Like, that's not going to suddenly make the belt like fucking insane. It will make it as good as it was at league start.
I mean, I think everyone who's reasonable would agree that the mods should refresh when you get a new mod.
I think GGG would disagree.
Yeah, apparently.
The only issue with mods refreshing is that if you can keep up Soul Eater for 100% of every map, then...
No, it would be a new Soul Eater that gains new stacks. In my idea, in my headspace, it would be a new one.
I think if they fix that problem, the Headhunter belt will go back up to 100x and tons more people will use it again.
Does it need to be back at that 100x point?
The only way it'll be back at 100x is if they make it draw from the old mod pool. I can confidently tell you that Balor, as much as you love your defenses, that's not why it was 100x. It was 100x because you could cheese so much content in the game with it.
Maybe.
That's fair to say.
Maybe it's just the way I use it and the things I like. I just want the things I like back. Look, I'm trying to put off putting on a Mage Blood. I don't want to use a Mage Blood. But I can.
Devices are good. They're good.
I can use mage. Well, if I'm taking off the headhunter, a mage blood's going on.
That reminded me. Sorry, if I link a PoE Ninja build, can you show it on screen, Catmaster?
Sure.
There is an absolute god in SSF.
Was it you? No.
Well, other than me, there's one other god in SSF. So
are you
this
gonna
guy
post
had
it
this
in the
gear
Discord or in the chat?
I'm gonna post it now. This guy had this gear on day 2. So someone was complaining about my luck with the Omniscience. This guy had this shit on day 2, and he's still only level 94, by the way.
That is
SSF.
very lucky.
What is this?
Gamer.
Oh god. Dude.
That is quite nice.
Day 2 in SSF, he had that.
You posted it in the chat.
This guy's gear is better than mine. Get out.
That is actually, he's definitely using accommodators. I recognize the bow and also the quiver. I believe he's accommodated as well. That would be my guess. But yeah, that's really good.
I'll post it in chat while Catmaster gets it up for the YouTube people.
Well, the thing is, I didn't have the Discord chat up. I asked you, are you going to post it in stream chat or in the Discord chat? I'm going to post it now. And it's like, well, okay, now what does that mean? Anyway, so this absolute god in SSF, you say?
Yeah.
Oh, that bow, dude. Oh, that bow is juicy.
But yeah, day 2.
It smells like the
Blackstone
Combinator.
Crest,
Yeah.
Omniscience, Mage Blood, just cash. And he had the
That's
double
pretty
6
crazy.
on day 2 as well. I was like, screw you, dude.
I think it's worth noting though because like I don't like how the topics have necessarily played out here because it's been so negative. We talked about Arc Nemesis and we talk about Head On getting nerfed. It's like, come on, man, this is the best league in so long. Why are we talking about these nerfs? Let's talk about the good
we
stuff.
still got a couple of minutes left, so come
It
share
is
your
so
enthusiasm, Grimro. Tell us about like what mods are you
will
looking
say,
for when recombinating?
I've been feeling kind of about PoE since like ExileCon. I've kind of been like, PoE's like, it's fine. It's like, I enjoy playing it for like a week or two every league launch. I'm just sort of waiting for PoE 2 to happen. This league we're only a week in, probably the most fun I've had with PoE in like the last 2 or 3 years.
It's good.
It's good.
It's really good. We should go for another half an hour. I think, Catmaster, because we need to talk about some.
If you're up for it, I'm definitely down. I feel
I'm not
guilty
rush,
because I did kind of cause the long delay in the beginning. But one thing I quickly want to say is I agree, but I already had that feeling last league. That I would play the exact same league again. You know, maybe preferably some different league mechanic than Arch Nemesis. But even if they changed nothing, I would have like played the game again because I was so hyped about the Atlas tree and the end game. Yeah, no, that was like completely happy with Sentinel because it's totally not my kind of mechanic. I mean, I like that they did something different, that it's not like you go into the map, you click a thing, monsters come out, you kill the monsters, you get extra loot, but it's a slightly different take on it. So it plays differently, it has different implications, but in the end of the day, it's still like a purely optional thing that is sort of on top of your gameplay and doesn't really like change the way that you structure your gameplay from the ground up. And that's fine. That's fine because I'm so happy with the rest of the game. That's why I'm enjoying Sentinel.
I think.
Can I have my face back on the stream, please? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I cover your face with the window
that's
popping
right.
up? Wait, let me see. What is that?
I think. Okay,
Lol.
to kind of talk a little bit about the elephant in the room. Most people initially thought that the league mechanic was gonna feel clunky to play with, right? Like, oh man,
Yeah, I was very vocal about it.
Yeah. And I think the reason it works so well is like I'm in the same camp as I think Balor or something like that. Like the Sentinel does get ahead of my build, right? But I will take 10 or 20 seconds a map to let it empower stuff because I know it's worth it, right? Like compared to something like a Legion, it's more rewarding than that. So why wouldn't I spend the time to let it do its thing, and then I get a really challenging pack and a lot of loot. And I literally go in my map and I rodeo herd up all the mobs and then hit my blue one, and that's a lot of fun, and I know it's worth my time. I think they nailed it on that respect. It needed to be rewarding, and it is, and it's worth your time. So even if you think it feels clunky, it's still worth doing and giving it a second.
Even the worst person who hates it the most, who hates that clunkiness, who just doesn't want to engage with it at all, can still just use the red one and just pop it at the beginning of every map, and it's still super good. Like, even if you're the least interested in it, you could just have a red tree. It's so good.
Yeah,
it's really good.
No, I think that's the best thing about it, because it's one of those things of you can put in exactly what you want. And like, if you want to be different, you want to be quirky, you can mess around with the Apex stuff and you can make that work for you. If you want to go super low effort, you can do what I'm doing, just go fully invested on Stalker. If you want to be like saying like, oh, what's the limit of doing the Pandemonium stuff, you then like trying to like, oh, I'm going to time it perfectly with my Expedition and like stack up a bunch of altars first. Like, I think it's really good in that sense. And I like the fact that I wish the skill tree of it was a little bit more interesting. Like, I realize it's cool in the fact that you guys have been arguing about what the best way of doing it is. But it's like, I had mine fully unlocked for like day 1, day 2, going really slow. And that aspect of it was a bit like lame. I feel like they could have made that more interesting.
It was a bit fast to unlock it. Maybe 2 or 3 more points, but they were really hard to get. There's even a unique Sentinel which gives you more experience, right? It's like, what's the point of this guy? It's like pointless. But I think overall, the main thing which I want to say is like, like when you're playing Path of Exile, the most fun question you can ask yourself is, what if I do this or do that or do it like that? And that is what this league has like in spades, right? Like, what if I activate the Sentinel here in this map like that? What if I do it on Expedition, on Blight, on Legion? Or what if I combine these Sentinels together? Or, I'm sure we'll talk about it in a second here. What if I do this with a Recombinator? It's just like, because some of the actual way it works is like obfuscated from us, we actually have no idea how like some of the recombination works. There's just so many things that you want to try, and that keeps you hooked.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Like, it's one of those things of, I went in with probably the worst mindset you could have in the league. I was super like, oh, this seems super fucking jank. I purposely went out of my way to make it as low effort as possible, and now for the last couple of days, I've been thinking, maybe I should mess around with Pandemonium stuff. And after Grim's like, oh, I think you should remember some of that. Like, I think that's good when you have that thing of, oh, maybe I should mess around with it. And also the fact that you can respec freely is quite unique in Path of Exile. It's like, I've been messing around a lot with my Atlas tree setup, but there's a massive opportunity cost doing that in SSF. It's like, I've got a limited pool of regrets and a limited pool of orbs for making. Whereas with this stuff, if I want to mess around with Apex stuff, because there's no cost associated to it, I will actually try that. Whereas if I had to sink like 50 regrets, I would never try it. So I think that's a very good thing.
I think a lot of it is like, everyone's saying the Apex Sentinel is really bad, right? Everyone's like, it sucks. But I think that people might actually be like, has anyone actually like seriously tried it? Like,
it requires way more effort, I think, is the main thing. So people are like, oh, it's bad because I tried it once and it was like not worth doing.
That's the yellow one, right?
Yeah,
the yellow one. Yeah.
Yep.
Because what I've been noticing lately, and this is just another one of those what if kind of scenarios, is recently I dropped the Stream of Consciousness Keystone because I wanted to get some more maps. And I put the Elder Scarab on, and I started noticing that the null portals that I empowered with my Sentinel would drop multiple of the reward tile on its head. And I was like, that's strange. Like, why is it doing that? I checked my Sentinel. There's no chance to double loot. It's just dropping more because it's unique and it's getting empowered. So there is so many little hidden interactions that we just have no real understanding of yet. I think that are probably going to come into play. And like, does anyone even know what the empowerment number does? Like, does it? I don't actually know what it does. Like,
well, GGG purposely didn't tell us that. What you might find it interesting. I don't know if you saw it. Lighty is in like SSF Lighty, not. Well, SSF Lighty is in not the other SSF Lighty.
Mad Lighty, or you mean?
Not the racer, the unique Lighty.
Mad Lighty, right?
Yeah, that Lighty. He very early on in SSF was just doing like full rogue exile maps, and then because they're all uniques, and then Apex and just like whizzing through and tagging them that way. There's definitely interesting things you can do with it, and I'm sure it's the kind of thing that I could see someone like Octavian doing when he does his weird like glass blower Atlas strategies and stuff like that. I'm sure there's something quite good you can get out of it.
Well, I can tell you the unique ones are completely crazy. They're like bonkers. Like, you can walk into a map and get 100 scarabs out of the map. It's pretty crazy. It's really good. But I think overall, basically what I'm saying is we're just like at the tip of the iceberg. Like people are going to continue to discover stuff. The biggest example of this in PoE is back in Harvest. Everyone was like getting jiggly jazz about the crafting. Everyone like went through. And then in month 2, the Magic Find guys rock up and start farming headhunters from having full unique mobs in the patches, right? Like that's not something that really got discovered.
3 or 4 a map. They're like,
no,
hello?
It's not something that got discovered until much later. And I imagine that's probably where the Apex Sentinel is going to come into its own.
My assumption with the yellow sentinels has been that I will just leave them off on my filter until Grim tells me how to use them, and then I'll deal with it then.
Yeah,
I've been telling everyone that's what I'm doing. I'm just going to leave them off. I don't want to deal with them until Grim tells me how they work, and then I'll use them.
Honestly, just get the ones that empower 3 enemies and drag them into triple bosses. I've been having great fun with that.
It's pretty interesting. It's going to require more testing, but that's the beauty of it, right? I think we should talk briefly about the combining of Sentinels, because I don't know if you guys have done it, but it's pretty fun, and it's actually quite rewarding, like incredibly, actually, in fact. Like if you have a good reward type, which you're a big fan of, like Currency, Expedition, Sentinel rewards, or something like that, and you can manage to get that on one of the mutated bases, it becomes like 4 times as good because it has like, triple the charges and powers way more enemies and all sorts of stuff like that. So normally gimmicks like that in a league are never worth doing, but in Sentinel they made sure it was worth doing, which is pretty damn cool.
Yeah, do you mind quickly going into the basics of the recombination, how it works? So when I combine 2 Sentinels with a power core, there's a 50-50 chance that either base type gets picked, or like a equal chance for either base type, but you could get a mutated base type. It could pick the item level from one or the other, or like could average it, or
So look, I think anyone who's saying this is how they work, you have to take it with a grain of salt, including me. Like anyone who says they know exactly how it works could be wrong, because it's like, like who knows? Like GGG have left that unknown for a reason. Right. I can tell you how I think it works, if that works. Well, based on the Sentinels I've combined. So it's a 50-50 chance on the Sentinel specifically to keep one or the other base. That it's like a 50-50 roll. You roll the dice. Okay, I got this one. And then it's got a 1 in 20 shot of mutating with a basic power core. So you could get a cool new base, a shiny new car. And then if you use a transforming power core, it's about a 1 in 3 to get that new base. So you've got some agency over there on getting the bases. And those bases are generally significantly better. Now for the mods, the way it works is the Sentinel can have 6 mods, which is pretty cool. And when you put the Sentinels into the blender, each mod has a 50-50 shot of rolling onto the Sentinel. Well, that's how it seems, right? So if you've got like currency reward, you roll a 50-50, you hit it, great. Okay, that'll be on the resulting Sentinel. Except if, for example, you rolled a successful prefix 4 times, right? So if you had 3 prefixes on both the Sentinels, you rolled 4 of them successful. Well, the Sentinel can only have 3 prefixes. What happens to the 4th one? It gets randomly discarded, it seems. So there is quite a lot of deterministic agency with how you do things. And there is kind of a few rules that you want to follow. But for the most part, it's basically just, 50-50 chance at a lot of things.
Right.
Yeah.
Quick interjection question. What do you think came first when they designed the league? The recombination of Sentinels or recombination of regular items?
They said it was the Sentinels.
First the Sentinels, and then they were like, okay, it would be fun if we could do that with normal items.
Oh, this seems cool. What if we try this right?
Yeah, I missed that. Nice. So what are the valuable mods on Sentinels in your eyes, Grim? What are you looking for when you're looking for Sentinels that would combine well?
Sentinels that combine well?
Well, you already said that you cannot have all the prefixes because there's only 3 you can get. So you kind of want to make sure that between the 2 Sentinels, the desirable prefixes are not outnumbered by ones that you don't want, right? But like, what specific mods do you consider valuable on the Sentinels? Like, do you go for increased power gain from empowered monsters, or because that one is just
other than reward tiles, like obviously Expedition, but like what
else?
Those
are suffixes. So for the prefixes, the only one that really matters, in my opinion, is how many charges it gets. So if you can get 10 plus charges, that's like most Sentinels only have 8 charges, so you just double the value of the Sentinel. And on the suffixes, you generally want a chance to get a reward type. And it's interesting because those are so powerful, and the one Sentinel that doesn't have it is the Apex Sentinel, and that's why no one wants to use it. So the suffixes are like chance to get expedition, currency, or blight, harbinger, legion, and those are the things that you really need to be looking for. And those are the things when you're identifying sentinels that if you find an expedition one, for example, it can be worth 1 exalt because people just get that much money from them. And in my opinion, the best ones are obviously expedition, and the sentinel reward one actually might even be better than expedition.
Sentinel reward one is really good, yeah.
It's really powerful, yeah. Especially if you're playing an SSF, I might add, Tarky, because
right.
you get 2 or 3 recombinators per map from the Sentinel reward one, if you're doing it correctly. And obviously, we know how good they are, right? We'll talk about them, I'm sure. But I think other ones also worth noting is Legion, because if you take emblematic on the tree, it seems to drop full emblems because it worked that way in Scourge.
I think I've had that happen myself with Legion ones.
Yeah, it's really good. And even ones like Metamorph are pretty good as well. I think quite good. But the thing I was talking to a few people about is like, yes, okay, Expedition and Sentinel ones might be the best, but maybe Currency is almost as good. And if you combine it with, for example, Delirium, the sum total of both of those together might actually be better than an Expedition. And now that introduces potential for people to go out and buy those two and combine them, and then that might be pretty damn good.
Right.
But yeah.
How do you value the increased chance to add rewards stat over the flat chance to add a specific reward?
Don't value it at all. I don't think that the base rewards are cool, they're nifty, but the majority of how much you learn from Sentinel is from those deterministic, 4 or 5% chance to get X.
Right.
Yep.
I had a follow-up question, but I forgot. Does anyone else have one? No?
I thought about recombinators, I guess.
Yeah, I'm interested in gear recombination now. Because I only started playing with it today, and oh my god.
Does anyone actually watch the Captain Lance video on it? Because that one was what really got me into it, where I was like, okay, this is how I figured it works, and now it clarified the rules, and then I was like, okay, I had this, quick story time for my first successful recombination. I had a bow from a corrupted Val side zone, like something item level 70 or 80, +3 bow, but had no sockets and no other good stats, right? But I also had a 6-link bow from a Porcupine card, item level 50, 6-link white. So I apply essences to it, Essence of Dread, for +2 bow gems on the 6-link bow. And then I recombined the 6-link base with the +3 corrupted base, and it picked the 6-link base. It averaged the item level, so I had a item level 69 6-link with +3 bow gems, open prefix, open suffix. And that's now sitting in my sales tab and is looking for a new owner for 2x+. No, I'm happy with that.
I think one comment I'll just make is having combined thousands of the Sentinels, the robots, it's the same system. I can tell you that. The same system. It follows the same rules. And I can tell you right now, I think it's a little overhyped. Like, it's incredibly good, don't get me wrong. It's very strong, but people are comparing it to Legacy Harvest, and it's not the same. It's not even close.
Well, it's more
it's
gambling.
very good. Yeah, it is. What I say to people is it's very close to the old way of crafting back in the day. Before we got Eldritch Currency, it's very RNG heavy. You have the odds stacked against you significantly to get anything very, very good. You can get something pretty decent by combining 2 things that you buy off trade site, but to get something with 4 mods that you wanted, it's like it's very unlikely.
Double fractured things though.
Oh yeah,
and there's also the fact that it allows you to move mods onto items that shouldn't normally have them. So like ES spell suppression gear is a big one. I like it a lot I think it's really good from an SSF point of view, not just like a trade lead guys just buy loads of fractured items. It's because I was really anti-harvest crafting. It has enough RNG in it that I think, for me, if they say this is in the core game, I wouldn't have any issue with. Where if they had pre-nerf halves in the core game, I'd be like, that's gonna fuck the game for me.
This is how crafting is meant to be. Is how I feel all day when I was using it.
It's incredibly fun.
It does a lot to make previous rares valuable. That's one of the best things I think about it. Is there's a lot of time you would pick something up and it might have like 1 or 2 good mods and you're like, well, that's shit. that could have been good. Whereas now it's like, oh, this could actually be bobbed over. It's like if you randomly ID'd a wand with plus all skill gems and nothing else, you're like, oh, I can use that because I can use that to transfer skill gems onto something else.
Certainly.
I think that aspect of it is really, really good. Obviously, when it comes to doing like perfectly min-max stuff, you're not going to be as picky with that. You would mostly focus on like fractured bases and whatever, but I think it's really cool. And I had something similar-ish to what Catmaster was talking about. It. I dropped a fractured +1 socketed gems bow, but on a really slow bow base. And previously, it'd be like, oh, I'd never use that for like Corsair on the wrong base. But now I'm like, I could do a really cool crafting project with that if I ended up moving that onto a thicket or something, or a Maraketh. So from that point of view, I really like it. And it's also way less bullshitty in the sense that you just get the recombobulator and you recombobulate. There's no like, let's fuck off to a garden and use TFT and do all this and do all that, and you know.
No extra steps. I like that as well.
I think the biggest strength of the system is the accessibility. Like as I was mentioning, you can get like three to 7 of these a map in some cases if you're using all of the Sentinels. It's absurd, and they're really, really cheap on trade as well. Like you can get most of them for roughly 10 to 5C, which is really good. It means anyone can get in and have a go. But I think, with the exception of like the cool like SSF kind of style crafts and stuff like that. A lot of the power actually comes from transferring essence mods. If you can deterministically get 3 bows, all of them have essence like cold, fire, and lightning. It's not hard to recombobulate them together. And the cool thing is you can kind of brute force it. If it takes you 30 recombinators and you make a 5 exalt bow, which is perfect for your, for example, SSF tornado shot omniscience build like that guy's made, you're online, man, and you made that yourself. It's fantastic.
Don't have to pay 5x for it in SSF.
Exactly, you don't.
What we made day 1. We got +1 arrow fractures and attack speed fractures and threw them together. So that no matter what, smart. I now have an attack speed +1 arrow bow. And now all I have to do is essence the prefixes, which is pretty easy to do. If you don't have to worry about the suffixes at all.
Yeah, it's particularly powerful. And like another thing which I see people a lot doing is like the Stygian Vices. If you want like a triple tier 1 resist Stygian Vice, you can do the essence thing and then do what Bal is saying. You can just focus on the prefixes because all the suffixes are done and, mess with it that way. It's really good. And
I want to point out, while I'm talking about like gross bows, I don't know what my bow's worth, but to have those 2 fractured on it, it's probably a 40x base. But like, you don't need to have even 10x to make use of fractured stuff with this. There's plenty of like, you can just go out to trade and for 5C or less, sometimes 2C, pick up 40 cold res on one item fractured on there, and then 40 fire res on another item for 2C as well, and then use a 5C recombobulator to smash them together. And if it fails, you've only wasted 7C, and you can just do it a few times until you've got one with the 2 bases, and then now you've got a pair of boots with 2 good res on them, and you can just essence a 30% movement speed on it and craft life, and for 15, 20C, you've made a 90C pair of boots that would any other league have cost you 90C and has fixed your problems. Like, this is available to everyone on trade. Like, you don't have to be looking at the disgusting things. You can get super cheap fractures on random stuff and just guarantee it and just make your own items at like the entry level part. And I love that exists, even though that's probably not any of us. I love that it's there and it can just be used.
I think, okay, I completely agree with you. So I tried using the recombinators to craft for profit, and I realized I wasn't really having much fun. I would get incredibly frustrated because one of the outcomes is that the tiers of the modifiers can go down, which, like if you've got a triple tier 1 bow, it's worth, X exalts. And then if one of them is tier 2, it's like, okay, I just lost 3 exalts value. And I was not having much fun. But I found that when I'm making gear for myself, it's far more fun. And I think that's honestly where the system shines. Like, if you need specifically like a double temple mod pair of gloves for your build, and then you make it yourself, it's like, oh, hell yeah. But then if you try and make that and try and sell it on trade and it doesn't sell, and it's like, oh man, that kind of sucks. So I think it's most fun when you're doing SSF for your own build. And crafting for profit, not so much, at least for me.
I think the best thing about it, and something that people don't talk about, is I think the first crafting mechanic GG's put into the game that actually promotes people learning how to fucking craft. Because Harvest, for example, you didn't really learn how to craft. People are like, oh, I want to make a Fizz two-handed axe or whatever. So they would just get a base axe and they would just throw Fizz chaoses at it until they got something good. And then they might like exalt force mods on there or whatever. And they didn't learn how to craft, they learned how to use Harvest. Whereas I feel like this is like you could have like very little knowledge of Path of Exile, but you're like, oh, I smush these two items together. Okay, so I want to get a good mod here and a good mod here. How can I get that? I could buy that, or like, oh, I could essence that one on here. And then when they start messing around with fractures, I've had normally what will happen is like if I do a build, I'll get people actually you have this, so like them basically like, oh, is this a good item or is this good this or is this a good that? I had one guy who was messaging me a lot about my build. That he was playing in Trade League, and he's like, yo, so like, could I theoretically smush together a +1 fire gems and like a +1 all gems and end up with a +2? And I'm like, yeah, that would work. He's like, all right, cool.
That's actually what I'm looking to do for my
over the space of like the next 3 hours, he just kept progressively whispering me like a better and better version of the same weapon. And the weapon he ended up with would have previously cost him like, you know, however many exalts in League Swarm was pretty much perfect. And that was someone who didn't know what the fuck they were doing, but just through process of elimination was like, oh, this is how I start to interact with these systems. And they were learning along the way, rather than just like, oh, I'm going to spam free chaos lucky crafts on Harvest or whatever.
I think, yeah, the only rule to remember is that all you need to know is don't overload the prefixes and suffixes, and you're off to the races, man. You can do whatever you want. And you'll have a basically, depending on how many mods you want, a reasonable chance of hitting it. Because the way is, if it's like, let's say you want 2 mods, right? There's one on each side, and you don't care about the base. They're both the same base. You got one 50-50 to get the first mod, and then another 50-50 to get the second mod. So it's 25% chance. A 1 in 4 of getting 2 mods that you actually want. And that's the +2 1 scenario from Tarky's example. It's actually really easy to get. So yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I need to get back up and start crafting more stuff.
Yeah, I need to buy some bases before the market catches on.
Actually, that's actually a really good point. I was buying Stygian Vices earlier, and there is insatiable demand for just bulk bases. Like, people just want all the bases because you need to roll them all with essences and then slam them all together, and it just destroys so many bases in the game. It's really good, honestly, for the economy. It's taking items and removing them and creating value out of them.
That's actually a factor that we haven't mentioned at all. It's good that you bring that up. It's incredibly good because it takes so much shit out of the economy. And that's honestly like what we need in non-hardcore leagues is more item sinks to keep the economy alive longer.
If we're talking from an SF point of view, well, it's really good for the situation of what I would often do in SSF is get like a base tab, and that would just be like random, you know, good bases in like the 84 range. If they've got influence, then I have a separate tab of like eye level 86. And once I've got like 1 or 2 86 Marakeths or whatever, I wouldn't need any more. Whereas now I've got a reason to keep building that bulk up, and I'm like constantly smushing dragon scale boots together. I've gone through like 30 trying to craft perfect boots and whatever.
Yeah, man.
It's good shit.
Yeah.
It's great. First league I've ever picked up a white base is this league. Like after like day 3. I just pick up all the spine bows, have a blast for some essences, smash them all together. Maybe I get something good. It's pretty good.
It's nice. Yeah.
What are you doing, Catmaster?
What?
I'm watching myself play paint on your stream.
What?
On the overlay.
What?
That's me.
Oh, yeah.
On paint.
Yeah.
I'm wearing the same shirt, apparently.
Right, yeah, that's just from your WOD. I don't know. I don't know what you were doing on your stream, but like, don't blame it on me, dude.
I thought you were bringing up something of like value. I'm like,
yeah.
and because I think it's the same shirt, I didn't realize it was a VOD. I'm like, wait, is he doing paint? He's just put my cam on there twice or something?
Yeah, exactly.
And then I clocked like, oh no, that was from like, you know, whatever.
What were you doing there, though?
Oh, that was, we were waiting for the Sentinel. So I was making a bingo card really slowly in paint. And it was triggering...
it started the reveal stream because your other stream ended and you did only have one stream since league start.
Yeah, because I don't stream. People, that's really funny because I just do YouTube now. People are like, TarkeCat doesn't even play Path of Exile. I haven't seen him in the Twitch section in years. I was like, yeah, because I don't fucking stream anymore, dude. I do Bay Class on Twitch and I do YouTube. Doesn't count unless it's live.
Well,
I have a question actually for you guys. So
Awesome.
I'm going to start out with my answer and then I'll hand it over to you guys. So for me, the holy trinity of a good league is aspirational content, good rewards, and accessible new ways to increase your power, like crafting basically. And this has it all. Ignoring my boy Headhunter, ROP, as well as Arc Nemesis, it's just honestly, I can't remember the last time they've designed a league which had it all and was so good. My question is this your favorite league? And if not, what is your favorite league?
Didn't Expedition have all that?
Actually, Expedition. I think Expedition didn't have like new player power. It actually reduced our power, but that's beside the point.
Well, it had
I
rock
have a
crafting,
problem
but
with the
no
question.
new power, I guess.
I have a problem with the question, and it's because I want to say it's my favorite league, but I
Too
say
soon?
that every league because I
yeah, fair
really
enough.
like league starts, and in the first month of every league, I'm just super hyped to be here, and so I don't have a real valid opinion that isn't around hype until month 3. So I don't think I can actually answer the question.
That's fair
I'm
enough.
having a
Yeah.
lot
This
of
is
fun,
what
and it feels
what
like
is
my
this, yeah.
favorite, but it always does.
This is what I can say about Sentinel. Sentinel is the first league they've made in a very long time where I'm not saying this could be a really good league if they made this change. It feels like every fucking league I've played for the last, like, except for, I really liked Ultimatum. I know people were kind of iffy on it. Except for Ultimatum Expedition, this is the first league I've played where I'm like, this could be good if they did this one change, or if they did this. Yeah, there's issues with like Arch Nemesis mods or whatever, but like that separate league point of view, I think is great. For me, it's the only like leagues I've enjoyed in recent memory have been Ultimatum Expedition, and I preferred the gameplay of Ultimatum because for whatever reason I just liked Ultimatum quite a lot. But I think, yeah, probably Sentinel in recent years is probably my fave.
I think the only thing that comes close to me, even close, is actually Synthesis League. However, Synthesis League had dog shit rewards outside of the synth bases.
It took them like 2 months to get it sorted, didn't it?
It was not good. But yeah, that's best league ever.
I'm going to say the most horrible thing.
Go on.
Because you know how many times I've said Harvest is trash. I wish it didn't exist. We should burn it to the ground. Right? It's pretty well known that I hate Harvest.
Oh, I've said that myself
Shit
many
fucking
times
league,
this
damn it,
league.
yeah.
Harvest League itself was probably the most fun I've ever had. And I don't think it had much to do with Harvest, but it had everything to do with Harold existing and just really, really enjoying the power fantasy of 2.6 billion DPS in my hideout and an immortal character that I could spend 50x on a single jewel on. And just being able to min-max into one build for like 3 months and not run out of upgrades. And I liked that. I don't want it back. I never wanted it to stay. But for a set period of time, that was really fun.
I wonder if you can achieve something similar with Recombinators, because
I mean, I was
like,
going to say, aren't you in that state now?
I dogged on it earlier, but you can luck into, for example, like some of the hardest items to create ever, like physical bows or something like that. You those were like good luck. Now anyone could theoretically just get lucky and get it.
And also, there's more like chase things in the game. Like you've got the whole like ascendancy jewels and all that bullshit. Like I feel like there's more min max now, and like I don't know.
I think it's interesting though, because if everyone's like, Kat, did you want to answer? I don't think you answered.
Yeah, just real quick, my favorite league was Betrayal, and that was because in 1 out of 4 maps you randomly had Intervention jump you and try to kill you, and that just
you like that?
essentially changed the way that you play, that you approach the game, because you're always on the lookout, right? I really have become very indifferent towards opt-in mechanics in your league, where you have to like go into the map and click something. I want something that is always there, whether I choose to interact with it or not. And in that sense, Sentinel doesn't satisfy me. But I mean, I've said the same thing earlier already. But Sentinel is
that
enough
enjoyment
different.
out of Arch Nemesis though.
Oh, true. That's actually big.
Because that's why I enjoyed overtuned Arch Nemesis. Because I enjoyed Launch Betrayal because I enjoyed overtuned Intervention. I got that feeling from Arch Nemesis.
I felt Arch Nemesis would. I mean, you mean the Arch Nemesis mod implementation now in the league?
Yeah, you're getting that fear that you don't know what's around the corner. You're having to react around it. That's why I was saying.
Yeah, but I don't count that into the league.
I wanted the Arch Nemesis difficulty to stay the same for them to just remove the stupid modifiers because I liked that. Like, I like being scared in maps.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I don't attribute that to the league. So like, I'm not saying it's my favorite league because Arch Nemesis. Do I like Beyond?
Cat, because that's the same. That's like you can't turn it off. You know, it's like have fun with Host, baby. You know,
Beyond was my first hardcore league and will always have a special place in my heart. Yeah, I actually did not know what happened when I went onto Tidal Island on my first hardcore character, and all of a sudden you had these blue dudes spawning that were like 10 times more tanky than everything else in the Tidal Island, and they wrecked my ass. And yeah, I love Beyond.
Did you get to play Launch Invasion?
Sadly not.
Oh, that was good. That was fun.
I would have liked that, yeah. But, you know, maybe we'll get PoE Classic one day with all these classic leagues.
You can never have Path of Exile Classic because what is Classic? There's no, like, clear definable point. Is it fucking pre-Malachi?
It would probably be pre-league, in my opinion. That would be classic. You know, the classic
start
is
with
like,
something and then they'd progress it and release the leagues again and polished, obviously, like no bugs and stuff. I don't know how they do it.
Okay, Taki, it is a throwback. You know, like the Noogie Tri-Ellie split arrow, like you got 5 rangers with split arrow and then 1 spark.
Fucking Ellie Cleave, let's go.
Yeah, Ellie Cleave Templar, that is classic in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the way it would need to be done. But anyway,
Elemental Buzzsaw Scion.
That's too
late. Scion, fuck you.
Yeah, true.
Scion is
post-release. True.
Scion,
ugh.
Yeah, we're talking like Lightning Arrow Frostwall days, man. That's the days. I think I have a question. One more question. Sorry. So obviously, like personally, I haven't even done the Uber bosses. Have you guys? Like, I haven't even seen videos of them. I've just been so absorbed.
No. I'll get to them. I'll make like an armor stacker or some shit that's immortal, some version of an immortal build, and I'll do them later in the league just for the sake of having done them. But I'm not really a bosser. It's not like my content, right?
I'm looking forward to doing them when I get a 6th link. While I am God Gamer Omniscience SSF, by the way, I'm still on a fucking 5 link. So I'm like, when I get a 6th link. So yeah, but I'm looking forward to doing them. I haven't watched any videos because I feel like that's the sort of thing. If you're going to do it blind, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've watched some of the death clips from the hardcore race, but like all the win clips, but it's only usually like the last like 5% of the fight. And I've just intentionally avoided like watching the fights because when I get there, I'm going to be immortal probably, but it's going to be really fun. I mean, when I min-max this Omni build enough, maybe put a Mage Blood on it. I might go in and try on that. That thing has the damage.
I think basically this is going to be a segue into where do you think they go from here? Because, like, I mean, they've absolutely just blitzed the Atlas. They've given it so much juice. We now have complete agency over the league mechanics. They've given us a crazy new league. It's really great in my opinion. I'm sorry, Kat, you don't like it. And now they've given us Uber Elder. What could they possibly add now, man? And they've committed to adding endgame all the way up until PvE2.
That's actually quite easy.
Oh yeah?
Just keep it fucking bosses. No, because the whole point is that we're the current pinnacle bosses, like we're not seeing the big bad yet. They just keep introducing new bosses because they're gonna
evidently we need Uber infinite hunger.
No, so basically the way they're setting it up is they're doing like a cosmic pantheon. So they just keep slowly trickling in bosses. So then it's like next league introduce 2 new bosses. I was like, all right, the 2 new bosses. And the league after that, you then do the Uber versions. So you can stretch that out, and we only need say it was Q4 2024, then that's what, like 6 more leagues? So that's only 3 new sets of bosses and 3 Ubers.
That's actually potentially true. Yeah, they did also. Yeah, I guess I can see it. I'd be a little bit sad to see the current iteration of the Atlas go, but I guess maybe by then I'll want something new. Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, segueing into what you were already hinting at, you were part of a panel interviewing Chris Wilson during the 3.15 emergency podcasts, right? And one of the points that was brought up was itemization. And do you think with all the different things that have been implemented, the new influence, mostly, rare item drops feel in a better place now than they did back then?
Okay, so pre-Sentinel, no. You still did the same thing. You basically craft from a white base. Due to the fact of the existence of the imprinting mechanic and being able to cheese all the way up to a perfect Eldritch mod, it was the same. You basically go from a white base. However, what did fix picking up rares and bases and actually trying to use rares is the recombinators. There's actually now real value on identifying an item with even one good mod, and it can potentially be worth like 50C, even on trade, to someone who's buying and smashing them together. So, in my opinion, previously no, but now yes.
As someone who's bought a ton of 20 to 50C bases and smashed them together just today, can confirm this is worth.
Now, would I identify items on my filter? No, but would you be as punished for doing so? Also no. You may actually get something good.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, if you just do the very best bases of every single type, maybe exclude like some not so desirable ones. Although now with recombinators allowing you to take the mods outside of the respective pools, you can get fizz damage reduction on an ES chest piece and suppression. Then why not?
Yeah, like for example, a good one would be identifying, for example, bows or claws. If you hit flaring or merciless, that's big money. Someone is definitely going to buy that for like an exalt, probably.
So like go on.
Go ahead. No, go.
Yeah, no, like from an SSF point of view, it feels a lot better because that was always one of the things of you had to craft or get your own upgrades. So I would always keep like only the best bases to my build. I wouldn't be picking up bases for any other builds. So with Recombobulators, it just feels better because now like you're not just doing it for the sake of doing it because everything is going forward. I don't think it's actually done anything to make loot better. It's just made it more valuable and more worthwhile. It's very much a band-aid. And it's one of those things of assuming Sentinel did go core, which we don't know if it will, but assuming it did go core and assuming it followed the same setup as everything else, that you either spec in or out of it on the Atlas skill tree, you don't want to be in a situation where dropped items are only good if people are spec'd into this mechanic and you can get access to Recombobulators. I think it's very dangerous to kind of give GG too much props in terms of that, because when we had Chris on Bay Class, he was talking about how like, loot 2.0 is not really happening. Like he was talking about how like that's not really a thing now. They've changed their priorities on loot and whatever. And I still think there's a lot of issues with loot. This has just done something to make picking up ID bases better. But there's still so much work that needs to be done. There's still way too much bloat in terms of bases and all sorts. There's so many problems there.
So I'm just sorry to interject here. I don't know about you guys. I'm actually incredibly confused because on the podcast I was a part of, we had a bunch of questions and we got told no a lot. For example, can we run just one map, please? No, we don't want that. Enter singular focus. Okay. Can we just run one lead mechanic? Yeah, probably not going to do that. Well, okay. Well, we now have that mechanic as well. And even the deterministic crafting was kind of like, no, we don't want that. And then Eldritch Chaos Orbs. Okay. So like literally everything that we covered, and even chase items, we were talking about the ultimatum class. There was some hesitancy there as well. Mage Blood is now in the game, and even more like the Ashes of the Stars, Omniscience. It's like, well, like what is going on? Is anyone else confused here? Because I'm really confused.
No, I've had that as well. It's particularly confused. The thing for me which really kind of caught me out that I thought that was fucking weird. So I remember when I think the first time I spoke to Chris on Bay Class was around Incursion League. I remember then being like, being able to spec into master missions and this, that, and the other, and blah 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 blah. Like it was like a hard no. And it's something that would keep coming up for years and years and years. Like, what if we could block off the missions? We don't want to do anything fix on this. Like, no. The messaging is very confusing for me, and it's the thing which got really weird was when Ziggy asked about loot, and Chris was like, "Oh, loot to play is not happening. That's not the plan anymore." And he started talking about hard mode. And I'm someone who's looking forward to hard mode, but it feels like there's this weird thing when they're talking about mechanics where it's kind of like, oh, well, this is going to be a really good testing ground for seeing what we're going to do with that sort of thing. So you're like, okay, cool, but that's not out yet. And you're now making changes in the live game, which go against things that you said you would never do. So it's kind of hard to pass sort of what's what.
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing.
Yeah.
I think they should communicate more though. Like I'm not saying that they shouldn't talk.
Yeah, I hard agree on that because I was a little bit disappointed to only see Chris appear on another podcast now. After, well, basically we haven't seen him in 3.16 and 3.17 out of the league announcement stream and the reveal Q&A.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword, though, asking for even the level of communication we've already got, let alone more. Because what you get is you get honest answers from someone about what they think at the time that isn't set through a PR person, that isn't set through other team members. And then they say things like, no, we're not going to do that. That doesn't sound right. And then other people hear it and other developers hear it. And then it gets brought up at a meeting somewhere. And then it gets brought up at another meeting 2 weeks down the line. And then 2 weeks after that, we go, okay, we're going to schedule a meeting to just talk about this thing. And that idea like starts to work. And then they go, you know what? I think this would be a good idea. But 2 months ago, we just had a podcast that 140,000 people are going to say they said they'd never do that. And now they're doing that. And that's it. It doesn't mean I don't want them to communicate. It just means we really need to try and be aware that it's kind of a double-edged sword when we get like live face-to-face communication with them. We're going to get answers that were true that then change. And then that can look like it was misleading or a lie, but it was true at the time. It just happens.
I think one last thing I'll say is one thing that has concerned me privately is those podcasts did seem to create a lot of change in the game, like almost overnight. Like we were seeing the results the very next league, and even more so in leagues now. I am wondering if that was a coincidence or if they actually just took those podcasts and were like, okay, we need to address this right now, because that's too much responsibility to put on those podcasts. Yeah.
So I would say from the point of view of, because people always shit on Baker or complain that Bakecast is primarily like the dev podcast or whatever. Communication doesn't have to be an interview. That's the thing which I've been trying to ram the most. It's possible for them to communicate without coming onto a podcast. The developer manifestos they were doing in previous leagues was a great example of their communication, and that was something that was really good because they were like, we're making these changes, thinking for these reasons. And I wish they did one of those for Arch Nemesis. The fact they didn't do one of those for Arch Nemesis, I think, is such a massive fail. And hopefully they do one eventually on Arch Nemesis.
Yeah,
you can still have very considered PR communication. You just don't do it on a live platform. I would say 100% Grim that the 3.15 dev interviews led to the direction of the game. I think the most obvious example of that was particularly on the one that you, Tuna, and Gazzy did, talk about aspirational content, and the fact that now every league is going to have aspirational in-game content. That is 100% from that. As far as that is 100%.
That concerns me. I don't want to be.
And I completely agree. And it's something that one thing that I found quite difficult about it is when I announced oh, we're going to have Chris on Baycast before, a couple of years ago, just all right, cool. Like, we get to hear about the devs. Now it's like, oh, fucking, there's this weird, like, I'm some fucking politician having to represent the entire fucking player base to get the neens out as, like, and there's this really weird pressure on, like, when you are those communications. And it's good to have that communication, but the dynamic is very different now, which I'm not a big fan of.
I would love if they would actually put Sentinel core or not to a poll. You know how they do it in RuneScape? Like, I think it'd be great. I would vote yes personally.
Oh no! Please don't let them poll the results to anything. That's how we got necromancy nets. People don't know what they want. That's not real. We can't do that.
I don't even think I want Sentinel to go core. I like it as a one-off league. Not to call you out there, Grim, or anything, but I think you misrepresented me there earlier, like, because I said it in a way that was easy to misunderstand. I actually do like the league. Out of the leagues that are opt-in, this is my favorite league of the last years, right? I just mind the opt-in part, but that was the same problem. And I understand why they do that for almost every league, because people don't want to randomly die in their maps. They want to, like, have that feeling of agency, right? I click the extra hard content, I get extra hard content, then I die, then it's my fault. But if they just spawn rippy things in your maps, then a lot of people are going to abandon the game. I understand that. Another point I wanted to say real quick is, I do believe that, like, no change in the game can be completely attributed to a podcast or, like, specific feedback from the community, because I feel that all the feedback that the community can provide is already present within GGG, or most of it, right? Like, all the different points of view that we could have, there's someone at GGG who feels the same. But when we bring these things up as a community and we say that's important to us, then the power relations within GGG shift, or the priorities, right? And all of a sudden there is money and there is time to develop this or that thing that people always wanted to do. But I refuse to believe that it's like 100% from the community podcast inspired. I'm pretty sure other people within GGG wanted that as well.
I would completely disagree.
You completely
With
disagree?
Like 100% certainty, I would completely disagree. Well, now I'm not saying there aren't people, like, within studios, because obviously it's a situation of they have a million awesome ideas, and it's a situation like, we want to do this. As far as I'm concerned, this is purely coming from me. The massive focus we're having on Endgame now is 100% from the massive push for aspirational content in 3.15. And there's no way you could convince me otherwise.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just disagreeing on one point, and that's that 100%. Like,
I mean, at least the content's fun.
Listen,
and I'm not saying that you can't ever have. I'm not saying you can't have changes outside of that. And also on that point, I think a polling-based system would be very bad in Path of Exile because of Path of Exile's release schedule, and also the fact that GGG is always doing wild shit in the background that we don't know about. And you can't really have that polling without that context, because you're only ever polling them, oh, this seems like a good idea now, but we don't even know what the next major update is in 3 months' time, let alone what they're going to be doing in the next thing 6 months' time.
That is a good point, because if they released a poll saying, hey guys, should Arc Nemesis go core? I might have said, yeah, man, I love building the things and getting the loot. And then they would be like, surprise! I was like, no, not.
You keep cringing away every time you're like, oh no, are we responsible for this? But you got just remember, everyone's loving the new content, so you should just take credit for it. Just lean in.
I think a lot of people are enjoying the content, specifically the Atlas Passive Tree, but I think you definitely need to focus on the entire experience, right? Because, like, I think that there's a large demographic of people who will never see those Uber bosses, and Sentinel's great for them, right? I think that this is a good balance, but I think that they should not exclusively focus on the very end every single time. Like, maybe also like white maps. Maybe something in the white maps could be cool, or yellow, or something like that.
All white maps confirmed.
A couple of points on that. So yeah, that was actually something that I was talking about. I think there is a genuine concern for especially the new player experience, the early mapping experience with this new focus on the end game. We would talk about this with Chris, and he was kind of saying like, well, like PoE 2 is that opportunity for new players to come in. And like this whole Arch Nemesis change is a perfect example of how shit. Like if this was the first time playing Path of Exile, was this league launch going to Arch Nemesis mods at the start, you'd be fucked. Especially like if you're doing sponsored streams and you're like bringing somebody who's never played Path of Exile before, and they have to sit there and be miserable for like an hour, getting eaten by rowers. Like that's not a good experience. And the reason why I agree with Grimro, and I'm not saying that's like the model. And again, this is just my opinion. I'm completely wrong. I'm not the guy making decisions over there or whatever. But in theory, like let's just hypothetically, let's say that is like where the direction is. Like they took that massive push from the 315 interviews, and that like dictated the next year. Not dictated, but like it put an influence on the next year of content. And let's say they do another one in another year's time. That would be fine if there wasn't that insane pressure on people, because SteelMage, for example, doesn't want to do those dev interviews because he doesn't want to get shit on by people. This is something that we've had internally talking about Bay class stuff. Like whenever we announce these now, it's like we've got to deal with bullshit for like 2 weeks. When there's that much pressure, then you're only going to get certain kinds of voices doing it. So then, if you're someone who's part of like we don't like the Bay class crowd, you're only going to get more of people like us talking to Chris because there's so much pressure to do that. On someone new. Like I know you were really nervous up into it, and if that had gone poorly, would you want to do another one? Maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think, yeah, I mean, I don't know. All I know is that I'm having a blast. That's all I can tell you. And I hope that it's not at anyone else's expense. That's all I'll say.
I think the game's in a great state. I think the game's in a really good state at the moment.
I think that's a great
This has
positive
been a while
note.
between last league and this league. Best has been in a very long time.
Yeah, I think it's great. Everything is just so good. There's nothing where I'm like, that needs to change. Well, right now,
Except the communication part that you brought up, where Chris said during 3.15, we want to do more communication, we want to do more exchange with the community, and then there was like nothing for 2 leagues, and now a podcast again. And like you said, I want to echo that again. It doesn't have to be podcasts all the time. They could literally do like one of their written AMAs on the page, just collect questions on Reddit, and then they can pick what they want to answer and what they want to omit. They could do that as a video format as well, if Chris has the time to record a quick video speaking in the answers, something like that. I just love to see a more regular basis of communication with the community in whatever shape or form that happens.
There is only one thing I'd like to see them do differently. I'm actually significantly happier with their level of communication than any other company in the world, so there's only one thing I'd like to see them do slightly differently. They tend to avoid answering questions entirely when they know that they're dealing with this in the near to mid-range future. When they know something is 1 or 2 leagues away, they just say nothing. And I think I would be a lot happier if they just changed the stance of we're not going to say anything on that to just literally, hey, we're aware of this. And this is getting worked on, but we are not going to tell you how it's fixed because it's 2 leagues away.
I would have preferred if they never mentioned hard mode. Now that it's still 2 leagues away.
I think overall it is better knowing though. Like knowing that they were adding the Uber simulacrum and stuff like that, I was able to get excited about it, and it made waiting for the next league actually like easier for me. If they had told me next league that we're getting some really cool stuff, or we're getting like a rework to XYZ, or they're adding 5 new skills, I'm still going to be just as hyped, if not more, for the next league. And they have actually already said we're getting new skills next league, right? So I think their communication is improving, but they can always be better.
All right. I think I'll take those 2 statements as closing statements from Balor and you. Tarky, what is your closing statement?
I don't think the onus should be on the community to provide the communication.
And I'm going to get the last word in here. I love Sentinel League. There it is. That's the end of the podcast. Hey!
All right. Thank you both for coming. It was insane. Guys, if you're not familiar with these gentlemen's content, check out TarkeCat's podcast. If you don't know Bayclass, then I don't even know what you're doing in Path of Exile. Check out Grimro's content that has been exceptionally helpful for people to figure out the Sentinel mechanics and the stuff with the recombinators next to Captain Lance's
recombinators.
Huh?
No recombinators on my channel.
Not yet?
No.
You're doing a recombinator video, right?
Yeah, we'll see about that.
Anyway, check out Captain Lance's video about recombinators. And we're going to have Captain Lance here on the podcast with us next weekend, 2 p.m. GMT on Saturday. So a couple hours later than this one was, basically in 80 minutes from now, in a week from now. I'm not going to announce the other guest because chat likes to speculate, right? You guys can speculate who's going to be the other guest.
He doesn't know.
Don't take away the magic, Balor. Anyway, thank you guys so much for coming on. The like, subscribe, the usual stuff, and we'll see you in a week's time from now. Bye-bye. That was great. Thank you guys for coming on. And thanks for the extension, Grim. I really appreciated that when you said that we can go a half an hour.